tariff. The Treasury has confirmed that the Northern Powerhouse Rail will be classified again as an England-Wales project, depriving Wales again of £1 billion in funding. Instead, we are being asked to celebrate £455 million spent over 10 years in East Wales. This means no electrification beyond Cardiff, no new station for St Clears, even though it was promised through the levelling up, and no upgrades for Carmarthen Station. So what influence can the Secretary of State bring to bear on the Treasury so that the 1.5 million people who live outside the investment area, who are excluded, get the funding that they deserve?
Here.
Secretary of State, the truth.
Heavy rail projects in both countries are classified as England and Wales, whether the track is in Wales, in England or in both, and they don't attract Barnet consequentials because heavy rail is reserved. So examples of such projects include Padeswood in North Wales and the regeneration of Cardiff Central Station. Surely she must know that the economic corridor from North Wales to the North West is vital for regional integration and the economic growth of North Wales. And the scheme paves the way for more services, more regular services and faster services across North Wales and the North West.
Andrew Ranger.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Last year, the Welsh Labour Government introduced a £1 bus fare cap for young people. Since then, these reduced fares have been used on 2 million journeys. Earlier this month, Welsh Labour announced in my constituency of Wrexham that after the Senedd election in May, we will build on this success with a £2 bus fare for all fares and over 100 new routes across Wales. Would my right honourable friend join me in supporting this announcement, and can she update the House on what else the UK and Welsh Labour governments are doing together to improve Wales's transport infrastructure?
Secretary of State.
Well, the introduction of the £1 bus fare cap for young people and now a £2 cap on all fares from the Welsh Labour Government has been great news and will help everyone with the cost of living. And the 100 new bus routes right across Wales that will happen if the Welsh Labour are re-elected in May will further help people take advantage of the new opportunities and jobs we're creating across Wales. Of course, all this has been made possible because there are two Labour governments working together for Wales. Our record-breaking budget settlement for the Welsh Government has delivered nearly £6 billion more in spending power, enabling them to invest more in transport and other public services.
Mims Davis, Shadow Secretary of State.
Following an FOI, several questions at the dispatch box and my pre-Christmas letter to the Secretary of State, a serious explanation on railway funding in Wales is still lacking. Previously, she said in the Chamber, we are investing to right the years of underfunding. And to the Select Committee, there was a widespread agreement. Many others have expressed similar sentiments. Mr Speaker, this isn't evidence of underfunding, it's an opinion. So will she finally tell the House what method she is using to reach her opinion and outline how much Network Rail intends to invest in Welsh railways?
Secretary of State.
The honourable member will know very well from my reply to her letter that her assertion is fundamentally wrong because she's referring to a combination of operations, maintenance, renewals and enhancement funding for the total figures under Conservative governments. This Labour government has announced nearly £500 million investment in Welsh Rail, specifically and solely in enhancement funding. And that money is being front-loaded in this spending review period to deliver new stations, more and faster trains as soon as possible. But, Mr Speaker, she should carry on desperately trying to defend her party's appalling record in government because all she's doing is reminding everybody about it.
Midday.
Question 3, Mr Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The UK and Welsh governments are working closely together in supporting the agricultural sector, particularly so when it comes to cross-border movements and disease control. As always, our message to farmers is to remain vigilant, vaccinate where possible, source responsibly and test. Through this approach, we can minimise disruption.
John Whitby.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Given the integrated nature of livestock markets across England and Wales, farmers in my constituency are still facing challenges from restrictions linked to Bluetongue. Could the Secretary of State update the House on what discussions have occurred with DEFRA and the Welsh Government about minimising disruption to cross-border livestock movements arising from Bluetongue testing and certification requirements?
I thank my honourable friend for his question, and he's absolutely right to raise the integrated nature of livestock markets across Wales and England. And I'd like to reassure him that this government is working together with the Welsh Government on all animal health related issues, including blue tongue. I regularly speak to my colleague Hugh Davis, Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs, on these matters. Through this collective effort, we've ensured that livestock movements can continue. But I will stress once again the importance of being vigilant, vaccinating, sourcing responsibly and testing.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What assessment has the Minister made of the value of a single UK-wide digital livestock traceability system to support Welsh farmers and reduce welfare and compliance risks for Northern Ireland processors who rely on Welsh farmers?
Minister.
I'm sorry, it was very hard to hear that question, but let me assure him that our new SPS agreement with the EU will facilitate the smooth flow of agri-food and plants from Wales to Northern Ireland, protecting the UK's internal market, reducing costs to business and improving consumer choice.
Question number 4, Mr. Speaker.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welsh language broadcasting plays a critical role in shaping Welsh identity and culture. S4C has played a vital role in helping revitalise the language and ensures it's kept relevant amongst the ever-growing number of people who speak it, not just in Wales but around the world. Their essential contribution is reflected in the BBC Charter Review Green Paper published just last month.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Welsh does very well out of broadcasting, but I'm glad the Western Isles are well represented on the airwaves just now. The standout star of Traitors, this season's Traitors, is Stephen Libby from the Isle of Lewis. I think he's going to win it this weekend. I'm glad Gaelic has its place in the government's Green Paper on broadcasting, but the UK government gives S4C £7.5 million a year to help in digital broadcasting. BBC Alapa, the Scottish channel, gets nothing. Will the Minister join me in my efforts to get the UK government to re-engage with Gaelic broadcasting as a cultural and economic dynamo?
Minister.
Well, I think we're all glued to the traitors this season, and with the exodus from the Tory benches to reform, it's hard not to believe that we're actually living through real-life traitors. But I thank my honourable friend for his question. Welsh and Gaelic were the first languages of their nations and have a strong social, cultural and economic significance. As a Welsh speaker myself, I know just how important that is. This government recognises the contribution MG Alba makes to the lives of Gaelic speakers across Scotland and the UK. And my honourable friend will be aware of the BBC Charter Review launched in December, considering how the BBC can best support minority languages, including Gaelic.
The Minister will be aware that Ofcom is currently consulting on a draft code of practice for the prominence of public service broadcasters in the digital platforms. Does she agree that it's essential that SPLNEC is included in any measures that come out of that consultation so that they do have greater prominence on smart TVs and other digital platforms?
Thank you. My honourable friend, across the benches raises a very, very important point, and one which I've regularly discussed with S4C and my colleagues in the Department for Culture, Media and Sport. It is fantastic news that last week the BBC and S4C announced plans for a major new streaming partnership, giving greater prominence for S4C on the iPlayer. But I know there's more to do on this issue, and I will continue to work with my colleagues and broadcasters on this matter.
Chair of the committee, Ruth Jones.
Mr. Speaker, the Welsh Affairs Select Committee took evidence from the CEO and Chair of S4C last week, and it was good to hear their plans for the future. So what discussions has the Minister had with S4C and other broadcasters to further the development of the Welsh language across Wales and beyond?
Minister.
I thank my honourable friend for her question, raising the importance and sustainability of S4C. And it is that is crucially reflected in the BBC Charter Review launched just in December. And I will continue having those conversations with my colleagues here in Welsh Government, but also with the broadcasters themselves.
Rachel Taylor.
Question 5, please, Mr. Speaker.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. With your permission, I'll answer questions 5 and 6 together. This government is absolutely determined to improve the cost of living for families across Wales and the whole of the UK. It's why we're benefiting 69,000 children in Wales by scrapping the 2-child limit. It's why we're slashing household energy bills by an average of £150 a year, and it's why we're again increasing the national minimum and living wage, building on the previous increase which boosted the incomes of up to 160,000 workers in Wales.
Rachel Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The latest interest rate cut, the 6th since Labour formed this government, is great news for mortgage holders in Wales, in North Warwickshire and Bedworth and across the UK. Bringing down the cost of family mortgages by almost £1,400 a year. Would the Secretary of State update the House on how this government's policies are helping to strengthen our economy and improve the cost of living as a result?
Secretary of State.
Can I thank my honourable friend for her question? She's absolutely right, Mr. Speaker. This government is supporting people across Wales and across the UK with the cost of living. Since we came into government, households who are now taking out a new mortgage are saving around £1,400 a year on their mortgage repayments. We've increased the state pension by 4.8%, and that'll take effect in April, benefiting 700,000 pensioners across Wales, and uprating universal credit standard allowance by over 6%, the first ever permanent real terms increase, benefiting 320,000 households in Wales.
Mr. Speaker, the cost of living is still a major concern for my constituents in Llanelli, so I very much welcome the decision by this Labour government to give householders £150 help with their domestic energy bills. But can the Secretary of State explain exactly who is eligible and when and how they will receive this money?
Can I thank my honourable friend for her question? Energy bills are a significant issue for people across the country, and that's why from April this year all households will see an average £150 reduction in costs on their energy bills thanks to this Labour government. Energy suppliers will pass on the savings automatically to households, and she will have seen today the launch of our Warm Homes Plan, the £15 billion fund, and in Wales this will make grants available for households to replace gas boilers with heat pumps, and it will mean stronger standards on landlords who privately rent homes so they are safer, warmer and more affordable to run.
Ms Davies, Secretary of State.
Wales could be disproportionately affected by US tariffs, which could be a challenge for many Welsh businesses. The words of Labour First Minister Baroness Leonard Morgan in her correspondence to the Prime Minister. Lots of talk about traitors, but Mr. Speaker, we, the Conservatives, over the past 27 years, are the ones who've seriously scrutinised, challenged and exposed the failings of Welsh Labour, clearly propped up by Plaid and the Lib Dems. So will she confirm it's the two fabled Labour governments who simply cannot work together who are just making the cost of living and unemployment worse in Wales?
Secretary of State.
Wages are up, inward investment is up, inactivity is down on the year, unemployment is down on the year, and we've had 6 cuts in interest rates so that families taking out a new mortgage are £1,400 a year better off than they were under the Tories.
Sean Davis.
Number 7, sir.
Minister.
As two governments, we are committed to working together to keep cross-border arrangements fair, transparent and patient-centred. I'm proud that last year's spending review saw the largest financial settlement in the history of devolution. Working in partnership, we will fix the NHS and make it fit for the future.
John Davis.
Mr. Speaker, the incredible Lincoln Davis Cancer Charity provides life-saving and life-changing cancer care, working with the NHS to support patients across Wales, Telford and wider Shropshire. The charity and the NHS has plans to double capacity of cancer treatment. I am proud to support this campaign. Will the Secretary of State and the Minister meet with me to discuss how she, the Welsh Government and the Welsh NHS can work together to double cancer treatment across our area?
I thank my honourable friend for raising the important work of the Lincoln Davis charity. I understand their appeal is seeking to raise £5 million to grow cancer care awareness in his area. This government is committed to catching cancer earlier and treating it faster, and I'd be very happy to meet my honourable friend to discuss the charity's fundraising campaign.
There you go.
Paris Health Board Board has been categorising the needs of its patients based on cost rather than on their clinical need, and that's causing a real problem for the Robert James and Agnes Hunt Orthopaedic Hospital in my constituency and the associated Headley Court Veterans Centre, because they need to prioritise patients based on clinical need and not on whether Paris House Board will pay for them this year. What is the Secretary of State for Wales doing about that problem with Paris Health Board? So that we're treating patients based on their clinical need and in a way that my hospital trust can manage.
Minister.
I thank the honourable member for raising this, and I certainly can write to her with the details on the Powys Health Board and what we're doing, but I can assure her that this government is committed to working with the Welsh Government to ensure cross-border arrangements are fair and transparent and focused on patient needs. This is two Labour governments working together in partnership and delivering together.
Before we come to Prime Minister's questions, may I extend a warm welcome to the President of the Storting, the Norwegian Parliament, and his delegation, who are with us in the gallery today. We start with questions to Prime Minister Dr. Jeevan Sanda.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Question number 1.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In recent days, I've spoken extensively to our international allies, including European leaders and others, the US and NATO. We will continue to engage constructively to resolve issues, particularly relating to international security, applying the principles and values that I set out on Monday. Mr. Speaker, in addition this week, the Government has announced a landmark investment to support children with special educational needs, overhauled our water system, and today launched a £15 billion plan to create warm homes. At home and abroad, this Labour government is delivering for the British people. This meeting I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We face an affordability crisis in this country. In the short term, our dependence on fossil fuels lead to a rise in energy bills, and in the longer term, the aftershocks of Thatcher mean there are not enough good non-graduate jobs. And that's why today's Warm Homes Plan is such good news. Making life affordable. Batteries, solar, home insulation. Getting bills down, wages rising, making life affordable. But we must go further. So can I ask the Prime Minister they would do even more to make sure that life is affordable for my
the Prime Minister.
Can I thank my honourable friend? I know how much he cares about making life affordable. Mr. Speaker, we're taking £150 off energy bills. That's £300 for the 6 million poorest families, including almost 3,700 households in his constituency. The Warm Homes Plan we're announcing today is the biggest ever public investment in upgrading British homes. It will lift 1 million households out of fuel poverty, tackling the cost of living. That's the difference a Labour government makes.
Mr. Speaker, can I welcome the Prime Minister following our lead on children accessing social media? In particular, can I thank the Shadow Education Secretary, 61 Labour MPs and the Greater Manchester Mayor for forcing him to think again. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister and I agree. The future of Greenland should only be decided by the people of Greenland. When the Prime Minister made this point to President Trump on Monday, did the President agree or disagree?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, engaging constructively on international security matters hugely, particularly when it comes to security in the Arctic, and that's the context in which this discussion is going on in relation to Greenland. As we engage constructively, I have made my position clear on our principles and values. The first of those is that the future of Greenland is for the people of Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. The second is that threats of tariffs to pressurise allies are completely wrong. Mr. Speaker, we will continue to engage constructively. I've had many international calls in recent days, and the Prime Minister of Denmark is coming to the United Kingdom tomorrow for bilateral talks. But I do want to be clear with the House. I will not yield, Britain will not yield on our principles and values about the future of Greenland under threats of tariffs. And that is my clear position.
Mr. Speaker, I'm very glad to hear the Prime Minister say that. We all know that the people of Greenland do not want to be ruled by America. But does he agree that just as those in Greenland should decide their own future, so should the Chagossians?
Mr. Speaker, I've made out my position on Greenland absolutely clear on Monday and a moment ago. President Trump deployed words on Chagos yesterday that were different to his previous words of welcome and support when I met him in the White House. He deployed those words yesterday for the express purpose of putting pressure on me and Britain in relation to my values and principles on the future of Greenland. Mr. Speaker, he wants me to yield on my position, and I'm not going to do so. Given that that was his express purpose, I'm surprised the Leader of the Opposition has jumped on the bandwagon. I had understood her position. Mr. Speaker, I had understood her position to be that she supported the government's position on the future of Greenland. Now she appears to support words by President Trump to undermine the government's position on the future of Greenland. She's chosen naked opportunism over the national interest.
Mr. Speaker, we'll note that when I asked him what the President told him, he couldn't tell us. Now he expects us to believe he knows what's going on in President Trump's mind. Let me remind him. His Deputy Prime Minister, then Foreign Secretary, used to say that if President Trump didn't like the deal, it wouldn't go ahead. And let's look at what President Trump actually said. The Chagos deal is an act of great stupidity and a sign of total weakness. We didn't need President Trump to tell us that. We've been saying this for 12 months. And let's remind the Prime Minister, President Trump thought that we were doing this, that the Prime Minister is doing this for money. The Prime Minister is giving away territory we own and paying £35 billion for the privilege. Why doesn't he just scrap this terrible deal and put the money into our armed forces?
Prime Minister.
The words from President Trump were expressly intended to put pressure on me to yield on my principles. What he said about Chagos was literally in the same sentence as what he said about Greenland. That was his purpose. And the future of Greenland is a binary issue that is splitting the world at the moment with material consequences. I've been clear and consistent in my position on the future of Greenland. The future is for Greenland and the Kingdom of Denmark alone. The Leader of the Opposition has taken 3 positions in 10 days. 10 days ago, she said Greenland was, in her words, a second-order issue. 4 days ago, she said she supported our position on Greenland. Now she's backing arguments intended to undermine our position, Britain's position on Greenland. This is an important national moment, and yet again the Leader of the Opposition has shown she is incapable of rising to it.
I've already told him we agree on Greenland. I'm asking about the Chagos deal. That money, that £35 billion, should go to the armed forces. Mr. Speaker, the world is changing. We are in a very different place, the most dangerous international environment since the end of the Cold War. Last week, the head of the armed forces, not me, the head of the armed forces warned that our military faces a £28 billion shortfall. Is he right?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud we're spending more on defence than any time since the last Labour government. The Strategic Defence Review is back the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the Cold War. That's £270 billion this Parliament, making defence an engine of growth. That is a stark contrast. Ben Wallace, the longest-serving Conservative Defence Secretary, openly admitted that under their watch our armed forces were hollowed out.
Order, order, order. Mr Bowitt and Mr Cartledge, it is continuous week in, week out, and there's a couple over here who will also be going out for a cup of tea with you. Please, calm it down, or you know the consequence. Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, they shout on a Wednesday and they defect on a Thursday. The loudest shouter used to be the former Shadow Justice. We should take a note of who's shouting most loudly this week.
Kevin Bernal.
Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to talk about defections. Let me tell him that when I had someone undermining my party, I sacked him. If he sacked... Mr Speaker, if he sacked...
We're going to get through this Prime Minister's questions. I want to hear the Leader of the Opposition and I want to hear the Prime Minister. Those who don't may leave the chamber. Come in, Ben.
Mr Speaker, we all know that if he sacked everyone undermining his party, his front bench would be empty. But these questions I'm asking, these questions, but jokes aside, these questions are about our national interest. These questions are about our national interest. We support our armed forces in every possible way. Later today, my party will vote to protect our veterans from unfair prosecution. He is ordering his MPs to vote against them. In our national interest, and for the sake of all the brave people in the armed forces, past, present and future, will the Prime Minister do the right thing and vote in support of our veterans, not against them?
Mr Speaker, she's claiming strength. She read the guy's defection letter and then at that point decided to sack him. What was she going to do? Correct the typos and give it back to him? She should have sacked him when he made disgraceful comments about faces in Birmingham, and she failed to do so. And she smiles, saying it's a good thing she's cleared out, a good thing there's fewer Tory MPs. The rest of the country agrees with her completely in relation to that. On the question of veterans' protection, under the last government, they passed legislation which was struck down, leaving our veterans utterly exposed. We're putting in place proper measures to protect them.
Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to talk about leadership. Three of his own cabinet ministers told the Times on Saturday that he needed to learn from me.
Order! I'll tell you now, I'm having no more. Do we understand each other? Thank you. Come here now.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. But back to the national interest. Instead of acting in it, Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister just tries to get through the day. On the Chinese spy hub embassy, he's too weak. On Chagos, he's too weak. On funding for the armed forces, he's too weak. On protecting our veterans from prosecution, he's too weak. Yes. Mr Speaker, I will support the Prime Minister when he does the right thing. But time after time, this Prime Minister has done the wrong thing for our country. Isn't the truth that he is too weak to stand up for our national interests?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, I've spent the week working with our NATO allies to protect our national security and ensure we're having unity in NATO. That's a matter of national importance. She's utterly failed to rise to the occasion and show the solidarity she could have shown in this House. She spent the week trying to hold together what's left of the Tory party. And she says I should learn from her. She has no judgment. Only a week ago, she was saying in relation to Greenland, she shrugged and said it's some second-order issue. Terrible judgment. Then she flip-flopped with 3 different positions in 10 days on Greenland. She said Liz Truss's mini-budget was 100% right. She said last week she was 100% confident there'll be no more defections just before the latest defection. I'm beginning to think her judgment isn't 100% reliable.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. NHS waiting lists in Birmingham are down by almost a quarter under Labour and still falling. That's more than 28,000 people no longer stuck waiting for essential treatment. Yes, there are challenges still, but they are being addressed and progress is being made. Does he agree that this progress must be sustained, including by reducing ambulance waiting times?
Minister. I'm pleased to confirm, Mr. Speaker, that last week saw the second biggest fall in NHS waiting times for 15 years. Waiting lists down by more than 300,000, recruitment of GPs an extra 2,900, and ambulances are arriving nearly 15 minutes faster this winter than they were last year. There is much more to do. That's why we're delivering the biggest upgrade to our ambulance fleet for many years. That progress has been made possible by Labour's decisions that were opposed by the parties opposite.
Leader of the Liberal Democrats, Ed Davey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We remember how Tony Blair ignored warnings from these benches and tied himself to an unpopular American president and a disastrous foreign policy, while close allies like Canada and France looked on in horror. With Donald Trump increasingly acting like a crime boss running a protection racket, threatening to smash up our economy unless he gets his hands on Greenland, will the Prime Minister avoid Blair's historic mistake, take our advice this time, and join Prime Minister Carney and President Macron in standing up far more strongly to President Trump?
Prime Minister.
Well, he clearly isn't listening. I said I will not yield on the principles and values that I uphold, this country upholds, in relation to the future of Greenland. But the relationship with the US matters, especially on defence, security and intelligence and nuclear capability, also on trade and prosperity. Mr. Speaker, whilst he's trying to get sound bites, we mustn't forget a war is raging in Europe. It is in its 4th year. The Russians are raining bombs down on Ukrainian civilians day and night. Temperatures were -20 in Kyiv last night. 60% is without power. People are erecting tents to keep themselves warm. We have to work with our allies, including the US, on security guarantees to make sure we can do what we must do in relation to Ukraine. Now, that does not mean we agree with the US on everything, and I've been absolutely clear on my position on Greenland and my position on tariffs, but it is foolhardy to think that we should rip up our relationship with the US, abandon Ukraine and so many other things that are important to our defence, security and intelligence.
Of course, we're not arguing that, Mr. Speaker. We're arguing he follows France and Canada, our close allies. But here's one thing that we can agree on, Mr. Speaker, that the UK strengthens our defensive capabilities, like the Prime Minister said earlier. But, Mr. Speaker, the government is going far too slow in investing in our defensive industries. It hasn't even published the defence investment plan that was promised last autumn. Correct. And that delay is putting critical industries like helicopter manufacturing based in Yeovil at risk. Putin is waging a war in Europe. Trump is threatening to undermine NATO. We have to rearm fast. So why won't the Prime Minister just get on with buying great British helicopters made in the West Country?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's about the cheer across the whole country. Mr. Speaker, we are increasing defence spend to the biggest spend since the last Labour government. We are doing that because of the decisions we took at the budget in relation to the money that's available. He wants more money on defence spending. He wants it faster. What did he do at the budget? Did he stand up and say, I support this? No, he voted against it, against the measures necessary to carry out the upgrade.
Steve Yen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sadly, on Christmas Day, my constituent Beryl Barrett passed away after tragically falling into an unrepaired pothole, and I'm sure the whole House will wish to share my condolences with the family. In my constituency of Mansfield, there are literally thousands of potholes in our roads which Notts County Council are failing to repair. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that it's time the Council took action to repair our roads? And will he meet with Beryl's family so that we can work together to ensure that no more accidents like this happen again?
Prime Minister.
Can I send my deepest sympathies to Beryl's family, and I will make sure the Roads Minister meets the family at the earliest opportunity. Mr. Speaker, it shows why tackling potholes really matters. We're investing £2 billion in East Midlands to fix the roads and improve local transport. We're also putting in place tough new standards so that councils must prove they're fixing roads properly. And I'm pleased many excellent Labour councils across the country are leading by example.
Dr. Ellie-Charles.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For decades, our rivers, lakes and seas have paid the price of a failing system, so the Water White Paper is a welcome first step in beginning to set things right. But there's a glaring gap. Agricultural pollution contributes 40% of the pollution in our waterways, but merits only one single page in this white paper. Can the PM tell me why on earth this is the case, and when he will start working with farmers to support river-friendly farming practices and treat agricultural pollution as seriously as sewage pollution?
Prime Minister.
We inherited a real mess on water, and we're taking the most effective and far-reaching measures to deal with it. But I have to say, as someone who stood to lead her party, I wonder what she makes of how her leader is responding to this global uncertainty. Because what he's saying is this is the time, this is the moment to withdraw from NATO. This is the time to kick the US out of our military bases. This is the time to negotiate, hear this, with Putin to give up our nuclear deterrent. I'm sure Putin will be very quick on the line for that one. It's as reckless and irresponsible as their plan to legalise heroin and crack cocaine. That's the Green Party now, high on drugs, soft on Putin.
Can I just say, we don't ask opposition questions that come into the Prime Minister, not the other way around. Right, let us move on. Douglas McAllister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Western Bartonshire is set to benefit from record UK Labour government investment. £60 million of local growth funding just announced for the Glasgow City region, to add to the £20 million for Dumbarton Town Centre regeneration. Add to that the £20 million Pride in Place funding for my hometown of Clydebank, and the £1.5 million immediate impact funding. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that this is in stark contrast to the SNP, who abandoned their communities, and demonstrates the difference a Labour government makes to Western Bartonshire and to Scotland?
Well, I'm very pleased, Mr. Speaker, we're backing his hometown of Clydebank with £20 million of Pride in Place funding. And just this week we hosted a reception meeting people working hard to change their neighbourhoods across the whole of the United Kingdom. That's Labour delivering on national renewal. And as he rightly says, compare that to the SNP, more interested in squabbling over independence than using a record settlement to fix Scotland's public services.
Robin Swan.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Challenging economic inactivity and supporting the vulnerable across the country is something that we all want to address. So would you be surprised to learn that in Northern Ireland around 11,000 people previously supported by the UK's Shared Prosperity funding programmes will see those programmes cut dramatically, compounded with 400 job losses? So can I ask the Prime Minister, does he support those cuts of those vital programmes? And will he arrange an urgent meeting for me with the relevant decision maker in government and the organisations who have been impacted so that these changes and challenges can be resolved?
Prime Minister.
We've delivered a record settlement for Northern Ireland in the budget to strengthen public services and to kick-start growth. And the Local Growth Fund, designed actually in partnership with the Executive, will see £45 million every year to support local growth. But I'm very happy to make sure that ministers meet him to discuss the particular concerns that he has.
Kirsten.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 1.5 million women in the UK live with endometriosis, which is a painful and life-changing condition. As chair of the Endometriosis APPG, I met Jessica Smith and Endo Warriors West Lothian. to discuss their campaigns for a national endometriosis registry to capture and audit diagnosis, treatment and outcomes. Will he join me to commend the work of Jessica, Endo Warriors West Lothian and Endometriosis UK, and will he meet with me to discuss creating a registry to improve the lives of women living with endometriosis?
Prime Minister.
Well, let me pay tribute to her and all women and others who are campaigning on these vitally important issues. Far too many women are left waiting in serious pain for care, and that's why we're investing £8 million in research on diagnosis, treatment and pain management. I know the Minister for Women's Health will be keen to talk to her about her proposals and the issues, and I thank her for raising it.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a constituent not yet 30 years old, a civil servant who's just been diagnosed with a terminal illness. She has been told she has a very short time to live. Because of her condition, she was given a retirement date, which was just last week. She has not received notification of any actual pension payment and has spent long hours trying to contact Capita. HMRC has claimed that all outstanding documentation has been supplied to Capita in November. I've written to the Chancellor, contacted the MP hotline and Capita. It still remains unresolved. Can the Prime Minister, along with the Chancellor, help to get this action resolved immediately?
Prime Minister.
Can I thank him for raising this case, and I'm truly sorry to hear about his constituent. If he wouldn't mind following up with the details of the case, I will make sure that it's dealt with urgently on behalf of his constituent.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday I welcomed Bermondsey PC Kevin Webster to Parliament after his recognition as Met's PC of the Year 2025. Will the Prime Minister commend Kevin for his local work and that of Southwark Labour Council's amazing nighttime antisocial behaviour team? Will he tell us when they'll have new powers under the Crime and Policing Bill? And will he remind the Met that its access standards require all local officers like Kevin to be a maximum 20-minute walk from their ward, a policy currently going unmet in Rotherhithe?
Prime Minister.
Can I congratulate Kevin and thank police across our country working hard to protect our communities? The party opposite decimated local policing and we're restoring it. There will be 3,000 more neighbourhood police on our streets by spring, an example of the change people will feel this year. Our Crime and Policing Bill will give officers more powers to tackle knife crime, shoplifting and antisocial behaviour. I want officers to have those powers as swiftly as possible. The Tories and Reform voted against them.
My constituents in Chester South and Eddisbury are deeply concerned by proposed cuts to police community support officers across Cheshire. The Labour Police and Crime Commissioner, Dan Price, was silent on this issue, seemingly content to see numbers slashed across the county until residents and local MPs spoke out. Now he seeks to present himself as campaigning to save PCSOs, whilst proposing to substantially increase the precept, all at the same time as planning to increase spending on his office by £513,000 next year. Does the Prime Minister agree that this represents a failure of leadership and that that money would be far better spent increasing PCSOs on our streets?
Prime Minister.
This comes from the party that broke our criminal justice system, just like the fact they broke our economy and our NHS. They hollowed out local policing. We're restoring it. There will be 3,000 new officers in spring of this year.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The thug in the White House has shown that he doesn't listen to grovelling or sycophancy. He'll continue to harm British interests, no matter how compliant we are, and, like all bullies, he will always find the weakest link. Will the Prime Minister close ranks with our European allies and commit to retaliatory tariffs?
Well said. Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I've made our position clear. I've set out my principles. I'm not going to yield on those principles. But as I said on Monday, of course we need to protect our national interest, and we will always protect our national interest. But simply hurtling at the first opportunity into a trade war is going to hurt working people and businesses across the country. And that is why I'm working hard to make sure we do not get to that point, and I'll continue to act in the national interest.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, the Prime Minister may be aware that my local authority in East Riding of Yorkshire is the lowest funded per pupil for children with special educational needs and disabilities, and that his local authority in Camden is the highest, an inequality he has repeatedly pledged to end. Well, Mr. Speaker, the results are in. Next year, children in my local area will receive just under £1,000. Children in his local area will receive over £3,800. The gap is getting wider. So can the Prime Minister explain to the House why he thinks children in my constituency are worth so much less than the children in his?
We're applying their formula, the one that you put in place in government. We're changing it. Special educational needs is probably raised with me more than any other issue in this House. We're proposing reforms. The issue he's highlighted, the problem he's highlighted...
Order. Sorry, Prime Minister. Mr Holden, as Shadow Secretary of Transport, you'll begin the express train and it'll be out of it.
I think he may be making himself the next candidate for the Thursday defection, because it's oh, maybe it's someone else. Those that shout loudest end up over there. And I thank Reform are supporting our recycling moves, because soon they're going to be a party entirely made up of...
Order. Prime Minister. Mr Holden, I think you need to leave. No. Prime Minister. OK, Rebecca Long-Bailey.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Police officers in Greater Manchester are facing exceptional pressures as they work to keep our communities safe from horrific terror threats, hate crime, organised crime and regular mass large-scale protests. But despite this, GMP received the second lowest percentage funding increase of any police force under the provisional settlement, leaving it £12 million worse off. Now, I know the Prime Minister will share my concerns, so will he urgently work with the GM Mayor, Deputy, myself and Greater Manchester MPs to ensure that GMP has the funding it truly needs to keep our communities safe?
Here. Prime Minister.
Can I thank her and say I was humbled to visit Greater Manchester Police after the Heaton Park synagogue attack. The professionalism and bravery that they showed was remarkable. Mr Speaker, we've boosted total police funding, and Greater Manchester will receive up to £902 million, an increase of over £31 million. I want to reassure my honourable friend we'll continue to work with her and local leaders to make our streets safe.
Matthew.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituency of Melksham and Devizes does not have a minor injuries unit, leaving many to travel far afield to Bath or Swindon to access A&E services. Would the PM please meet with me to discuss the need for an expanded hospital provision in my constituency? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Thank him for raising this on behalf of his constituents. I will make sure he gets the meeting with the relevant minister to talk through his particular concerns so that we can seek to address them.
Jasmine Qureshi.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. After 14 years of Conservative austerity, councils are finally getting the support they need to deliver for residents. In my constituency of Bolton South and Walkden, under the leadership of Councillor Nick Peel in Bolton and Mayor Paul Dennett in Salford, increased funding is being turned into restoring frontline services, investment in town centres and support for families. Does the Prime Minister agree that the councils need serious leadership and long-term funding certainty to deliver, not short-term protest politics that put services at risk? And will he commit to continuing that support?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank her for a question. Labour's boosting funding for councils that were chronically underfunded by the party opposite. I pay tribute to Labour councils delivering results for her community, in stark contrast to the division and chaos we've seen from Reform councils wherever they've been elected.
Katie Lamb.
Tens of thousands of
people across Kent and Sussex were without running water last week. While the response of South East Water was shambolic, the Staplehurst Emergency Help Team got a bottled water supplier, set up a collection station and delivered water to vulnerable people. Using only volunteers, they supported local people, businesses, farms and care homes with 20,000 bottles of water. Does the Prime Minister think, as I do, that South East Water should be ashamed to be schooled in crisis response by the volunteers of the Staplehurst Emergency Help Team?
Yes.
And has he, like many of my constituents and many of our colleagues, lost confidence in South East Water's Chief Executive?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank you for raising. The situation is completely unacceptable, and we welcome Ofbot's investigation into the company. That is the right thing. The Environment Secretary met company bosses last week to stress the need for accountability, and ministers are continuing to chair daily meetings. But it is totally unacceptable and it needs to be fixed.
Lee Barron.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For too long, many of my constituents in Corby and East Northamptonshire have not had access to good, secure, well-paid jobs. We made a commitment in our manifesto that we would change that. You can't grow an economy based on insecure work, where from one week to the next, somebody doesn't know how many hours they're going to work or how much money they'll be paid. Would the Prime Minister agree with me that all workers should have the hours that they actually work reflected in their contracts so that we can give all working people the security to plan their finances, the security to plan their lives and the security to build a future for themselves and their family?
Prime Minister.
Well, I'm proud of this Labour government delivering the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation. And we're ending exploitative zero-hour contracts, ending unscrupulous fire and rehire practices, plus parental leave and sick pay. And workers will benefit from those rights in April, Mr. Speaker, and they should never forget that Reform and the Tories opposed every single one of them.
Robert Jenrick.
Mr. Speaker, one of the last meetings that I took as Shadow Justice Secretary was with the parents of Lenny Scott. Lenny Scott was an exceptionally brave prison officer. He uncovered corruption in his prison. He left the service, and years later he was hunted down and brutally murdered. Because he died after leaving active service, there was never any compensation paid to the children that he left behind. I know the Prime Minister would want to right this wrong. I wrote to the Justice Secretary privately after I discovered this, and I should say his parents never asked for any support. Would the Prime Minister correct this, ensure that this brave man's children have the support that they need as they grow up without the father that they deserved, and join me in thanking all the brave men and women who serve us in our prison service?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank him for raising this, and I will make sure that it is looked into as a matter of urgency, given the circumstances he's set out.
Fred Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I strongly welcome the government's decision to consult on introducing a social media ban for under-16s. Something, Mr. Speaker, that the Tories didn't do in office, and they didn't even support until last week. But the average 12-year-old now spends 29 hours a week on a smartphone, whilst more than 500 children a day are being referred to mental health services for anxiety. These stats are not unrelated. Parents, teachers and members across these benches can see the damage that social media is doing to our young, developing minds every single day. Does the Prime Minister agree that the scale of harm demands swift action and that this consultation must lead to timely decisions?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this is an issue of real concern to parents. As a father of two teenage children, I know just how much concern it is. That is why we will have a consultation to look at expert and international evidence to get this right, and we will respond by the summer. And that includes looking at the question of the age that children can access social media and restriction on addictive features. I'm also concerned, as is the Education Secretary, about the screen time used for those under the age of 5. So we'll look at all of those issues and make sure that Ofsted checks enforcement of bans during schools.
Mr. Speaker, the Bertie Arms is a fantastic family pub, but because of the Chancellor's tax raid on local business, they face a 2,000% increase in their business rates by 2029. That means the Treasury will lose £200,000 in tax take, and Uffington will lose the heart of its community. Now, the Prime Minister promised not to put up taxes on working people, so how does he justify a 2,000% tax attack on working family businesses like this pub?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, we're working with the sector to put in the necessary support, but I would remind her that 7,000 pubs closed on their watch, and she didn't say a word about it.
Alice MacDonald.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Norfolk is a dental desert, causing real suffering for my constituents. I welcome government action so far, including 21,000 extra urgent emergency appointments. But we are the only region without a dental school. The University of East Anglia is ready to open one. So could the Prime Minister set out what more we will do as a government to tackle the dentistry crisis, and will he back our calls for a new dental school in our region?
Prime Minister.
Well, since day one, she's fought for her constituents on this issue, and I pay tribute to her in relation to that. I agree the University of East Anglia would be an excellent candidate for any additional funded dentistry places available in the future. Mr. Speaker, we're also reforming contracts and making sure dentists spend more time working in the NHS to ring thousands of extra appointments to fix the failure that we were left with.
Final question, Gideon Amos.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Children with disabilities and special educational needs in Somerset will be severely hit if the government goes ahead with removing the remoteness uplift from those authorities. Will the government commit to ensuring that those councils with the largest land area in the country, of which Somerset is one, are properly reimbursed for the cost of remoteness so that children in my Taunton and Wellington constituency do not suffer as a result?
Prime Minister.
Well, we do understand the challenges in rural communities, and we'll look at that as part of the work we're doing on reform.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches change over. Point of order, don't tell a chance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I understood that the purpose of Prime Minister's questions was for the Prime Minister to answer questions from MPs, and yet...
Hold on. I've not got the responsibility for the answers from the Prime Minister. I certainly don't want that responsibility. It is up to the Prime Minister if he answers that question. That's why I closed down. He is not there to ask questions of your party. I think we'll leave it at that. I'm not continuing the debate at this stage. Right, we now come to statements. Secretary of State, Ed Miliband.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with permission, I would like to make a statement about the Warm Homes Plan, which we published today. Mr. Speaker, this is a plan focused on the #1 issue facing our country, the cost of living crisis, and on the scourge of fuel poverty, which affects millions of families across Britain. Now, at the budget, my right honourable friend, the Chancellor, took an average of £150 of costs off energy bills from April. This winter, we've expanded the warm home discount to a total of 6 million families, and today we allocate £15 billion in our Warm Homes Plan. Mr. Speaker, a more than doubling of public investment in home upgrades compared to the last Parliament. In fact, the biggest public investment in home upgrades in British history to cut bills and tackle fuel poverty. And in making this investment, we turn the page on a lost decade of the last government's failure. Home insulation levels falling by more than 90% between 2010 and 2024. The promise of minimum energy efficiency standards for renters broken. The cancellation of the zero carbon home standard, and the repeated failures of schemes like the Green Deal, the Green Homes Grant and the Eco Scheme. And worst of all, Mr. Speaker, our dependence on fossil fuels, leaving us exposed to the worst energy bills crisis in generations. Mr. Speaker, the last government failed time after time. This government is doing the work to put it right. The starting point for this plan is that clean energy is not only the right choice for energy security and reducing emissions, but for cutting people's bills. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, the public agrees. They are showing record demand for technologies like solar, batteries and heat pumps that can save families hundreds of pounds a year. Heat pump sales in Britain have grown by around 50% annually, one of the fastest growing markets in Europe. Last year saw a record number of rooftop solar installations. And the driving purpose of this plan is to ensure those benefits are available not just to the wealthiest, but to families throughout our country at every level of income. The driving purpose of this Labour government to stand up for working people and tackle the affordability crisis. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, let me set out the measures we are announcing in our plan today. First, today we announced £5 billion of public investment to directly deliver home upgrades for low-income families. This will help families living in social housing and low-income owner-occupiers to have warmer homes and lower bills. In setting out this plan, we're abolishing the failed ECO scheme and making the principled decision that we should fund support through public investment, not levies on bills. And our plan, Madam Deputy Speaker, pays heed to all the evidence that says this funding is best delivered with local authorities and mayors in the driving seat. People, those representing local people, delivering for local people. And at the same time, we recognise the challenges facing suppliers who used to deliver eco, so we'll ensure this extra money is used to help support them. And my right honourable friend, the Minister for Energy Consumers, will convene a working group of contractors, social housing providers and local authorities to oversee this work. Overall, this allocation to tackle fuel poverty is the biggest public investment in tackling fuel poverty in our nation's history. Second, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a scandal that 1.6 million children live in private accommodation suffering from cold, damp or mould, according to citizens' advice. We on this side believe in a simple principle. If you rent a home, private or social, your landlord has a responsibility to ensure it is safe, warm and affordable to heat. The last government, Madam Deputy Speaker, promised higher standards, and then they ripped up that promise. Today we deliver. By 2030, private landlords will have to upgrade their properties to meet minimum standards of energy efficiency, and we've consulted on similar rules in the social rented sector, tackling the scourge of poor quality rented homes and cutting bills for renters. And I can tell the House that these measures alone will lift over 500,000 families out of fuel poverty. Third, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is right we target help at those most in need. But we know the affordability crisis stretches well beyond those on low incomes. We want to make it easier for all households to cut their bills by choosing a heat pump, solar or batteries. So building on the steps we took at the budget to make electricity cheaper, we're expanding the boiler upgrade scheme, increasing investment every year out to 2030, with for the first time a universal offer of £2,500 for a heat battery or air-to-air heat pump, as well as £7,500 to install a conventional heat pump. But I want to go further. Currently, just 1 in 20 homes in Britain have solar panels installed on their rooftops. We are determined to unleash a rooftop revolution, helping many more families generate their own energy to cut their bills. So I can announce that the government is for the first time ever setting aside up to £2 billion to subsidise zero and low interest loans for solar panels, batteries and other technologies, learning from the successful experience of other countries and meeting the demand of people for this technology. And Madam Deputy Speaker, this is just the first step, with a further £3 billion available for loans and investments over the coming years through our Warm Homes Fund. Fourth, as we upgrade existing homes, we will ensure that new homes are built cheaper to run with solar and clean heating as standard. And, Madam Deputy Speaker, this is just common sense. People cannot understand why we are building new homes with higher bills. The reason is because they refused to act. We are putting an end to this absurd situation. We will publish the future home standards shortly, and for the first time, solar panels will be fitted as standard in new homes. And alongside the other measures I've set out, this is designed to help treble the number of homes with solar by the end of the decade. Fifth, to make these changes happen, we cannot go on with the old system of accountability and delivery that has frankly failed. A situation where people have to navigate a fragmented and confusing system of home upgrades delivered through a bewildering number of organisations and schemes. And we need to face up to the fact that after repeated failures of the last government to deliver schemes effectively, we need a specialist body with the technical expertise and focus required. So consolidating functions from Ofgem and other organisations and abolishing SALIX, and with no increase in arm's length bodies, we will establish a new warm homes agency. It will deliver impartial advice and guidance, work with local authorities and businesses, oversee government schemes, backed by a reformed system of consumer protection. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, we will put an end to the scandalous failure of accountability and regulation and the waste of the public's money we saw under the last government. Finally, we are determined to ensure this rollout delivers not just for consumers but workers too. We're the largest producers of gas boilers in Europe, and there's a huge opportunity to harness this expertise to produce heat pumps as well. Manufacturers are already embracing this opportunity, including Ideal Heating in Hull, Valent in Derbyshire, which I visited last year, and Copeland in Northern Ireland. But currently less than 40% of heat pumps sold in Britain are made in Britain. We're setting a new aim of at least 70% of heat pumps installed in the UK being made in the UK, backed by a trebling of public investment in heat pump manufacturing with £90 million set aside today. Overall, we expect the Warm Homes Plan to support up to 180,000 additional jobs in energy efficiency, heat pumps and heat networks by the end of the decade, creating opportunities for builders, electricians, plumbers and installers, as well as new workers entering the industry. And Madam Deputy Speaker, we will establish a new task force with the TUC, working with business, to ensure these jobs are well paid and highly skilled, with a proper role for trade unions. Because we are a Labour government, we expect the rights of working people to be at the heart of this industry's future. Madam Deputy Speaker, taken together, this is a landmark plan that stands in a great reforming tradition of Labour governments. After 1945 delivering on the promises of homes for the people, modernising the nation's housing stock under Harold Wilson in the 1960s, introducing the decent home standard for social housing in the 2000s. Each Labour government meeting the rightful expectations of working people that the next generation can expect higher standards of living than the last. That is what this government seeks to do in our time. A plan to cut bills for millions, help lift 1 million families out of fuel poverty, and create good jobs. And I commend this statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Minister Andrew Bowie.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And I thank the Secretary of State for advance copy of his statement today. Today's announcement is long overdue, an entire year to be exact. During the general election, Madam Deputy Speaker, the Labour Party claimed that they would cut household bills. This announcement should be part of that. Yet, in that time, since the general election and under this Secretary of State's watch, energy bills have not fallen, they have gone in the opposite direction. Energy bills are up by £200 since that election, partly as a result of the Secretary of State's own political choices. We believe there is a greater role in our energy system for home batteries. We support a more technology-agnostic approach to air-to-air heat pumps, and of course we believe rooftop solar is much better than carpeting the countryside in huge solar farms. But the Secretary of State is ignoring the core problem. We are in an electricity price crisis of this Secretary of State's own making. And even if we are as charitable as possible and accept that they reach 5 million households, as they say they will, benefit from this plan, then it does nothing to cut bills for 83% of the country. But those households will all pay much higher taxes because of Labour's budget, including to fund this Secretary of State's £15 billion plan. And those households are struggling with their energy bills now because of the choices of the Secretary of State. So, turning to the specific measures in the plan, his department's own figures show that the public is becoming more sceptical about heat pumps. Between winter 2024 and spring 2025, the share of people saying that they were unlikely to install an air source heat pump increased from 38% to 45%. And if you ask anyone why they don't want a heat pump, they will tell you it's the high upfront cost. Yes, but it's but it's also the high ongoing running costs, which often make them more expensive to run than a gas boiler. There is a serious risk that this government legally binding targets are forcing them to push people into buying heat pumps, but those families will all be locked into sky-high running costs because this government has a political target which is pushing up their electricity bills at the same time. Yet this plan does nothing to address those high ongoing running costs. Instead, last week, the government announced they are locking this country into higher energy prices for decades through the botched wind auction. Just imagine, Madam Deputy Speaker, if there was a plan on the table to cut the cost of running a heat pump by 20% instantly, a cheap power plan that wouldn't involve raising tax on working people to fund handouts, a plan that would axe the carbon tax and scrap the Secretary of State's rip-off wind subsidies to cut bills for every family in this country. Wouldn't that be a much better approach to make heat pumps much more attractive? Next, what steps will his department take to make sure the low-interest loans will provide good value for money? How many homes will benefit from the low and zero-interest loan scheme? And how will it be determined who gets a low-interest loan or a zero-interest loan? On the changes to the minimum energy efficiency standards for rented homes, he will know that the previous government did more than any other to improve energy efficiency standards, with half of all homes having an EPC rating of C or above when we left office, compared to 14% when the Secretary of State left office in 2010. But has his department carried out any impact assessment of what the 2030 deadline will cost landlords, and therefore how much we passed on to renters in increased rents? His own government's data shows it will cost over £12,000 to upgrade a home from EPC E to C. £12,000 of that will then be passed on to families in increased rents. We cannot ignore all the cost that this government is imposing on the housing sector and the impact that they will have on the cost of living for families in this country. The government's going to set up a new quango, the Warm Homes Agency, to administer these schemes. So can the Secretary of State tell us how much this new quango will cost the taxpayer, how it will be held accountable, and why he decided to spend money setting up a new quango rather than have those functions delivered by his own department that he controls? And finally, the Secretary of State has already been forced by this House to ban Great British Energy from spending taxpayers' money on solar panels when there is evidence of forced labour in the supply chain. Of course, we welcome that. But can he assure the House that he will apply that same ban on slave labour to solar panel installations funded by the Warm Homes Plan? And when will he publish details of how that mechanism will work so that it can be scrutinised by this House? In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, this government is ignoring that affordability crisis the Secretary of State talks about is a crisis of his own making. They are ignoring the fact that they are locking this country into paying higher bills for far longer. If they truly want to encourage people to adopt green technology like heat pumps or EVs, they need to make electricity cheap. That means they could adopt the Conservatives' cheap power plan to cut everyone's electricity bills by 20% and scrap this reckless Clean Power 2030 target, which is locking everyone into paying higher bills for far longer.
Secretary of State.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It's always a pleasure to be opposite the honourable gentleman. Let me just make a few points to him, sort of in the gentlest way I can. Look, first of all, on the cost of electricity, the Chancellor in her budget did more in one decision, which was to transfer the 75% of the renewables obligation to public spending to cut electricity costs, than they did in 14 years in power. The second point is he's shouting about bills. Let me tell him the average bill in 2025 was lower in real terms than 2024, and so was the price cap, as he will know from the figures. And I am incredibly proud that this government, unlike the last government, is taking £150 of costs off bills, thanks to the Chancellor's decision, funded by taxes on the wealthy, and they oppose all of those tax measures. He talks about the renters issue. I mean, I think basically what I heard, which maybe shouldn't surprise me, is that he is actually against the higher standards for renters. He would leave renters, private renters, languishing in cold, damp homes, which is what they did in 14 years in power. We are proud of the decision we're making. I mean, actually, thanks to the brilliant work of my honourable friend, we've actually got a supportive quote from the landlords. I mean, even the landlords want more action than the Conservative Party when it comes to the renters. I mean, if just sort of to amuse the House briefly, you know, I'll even read it out. Ben Beadle, Chief Executive of the NRL. A clear roadmap for the reform of PRS is welcome. So even the landlords are more on the side of renters than the Conservative Party. He asks, why are we setting up the Warm Homes Agency? I'll tell him why. He says, you know, wouldn't it be better to do it within government? because they presided over a scandalous and shocking disaster in the eco scheme, a mess we are having to clear up. And actually, we are going to reform the system so that we have a proper agency with proper technical expertise to make sure nothing like what they visited on thousands of families across the country ever happens again. In conclusion, Madam Deputy Speaker, I like the honourable gentleman, and I feel a bit of sympathy for him, because he has nothing to say about this issue. Let's just be honest about this. They failed over 14 years, and we're delivering.
Select Committee Chair Bill Esserson.
Can I congratulate the Secretary of State very warmly on the Warm Homes plan, not least the universal nature of the offer, from support for people in fuel poverty through health co-benefits in addressing cold, damp and mould, to the availability of cheap finance so everybody can take part in the technical solutions available. The eco scheme, which failed so badly, has left a legacy, and can I encourage him to address the concerns among consumers, amongst industry and amongst the workforce, and also not to lose sight of the benefits in reduced bills through insulation, particularly loft insulation. On the subject of cheaper bills, the Select Committee has heard again and again that in particular with the Warm Homes Plan, if people are to benefit to the maximum extent from it, we have to see reductions in the price of electricity and a reduction in the gap between the price of electricity and the price of gas. There are welcome measures. He mentioned them in his statement, the £150 off coming in April being a very, very good start. But can he confirm that more action will be taken on bringing down the cost of electricity so as many people as possible can benefit from the Warm Homes Plan to the maximum extent?
Let me address the questions that my honourable friend asked, and he speaks with great knowledge on these issues. Look, first of all, on the eco scheme, I think he was making reference partly to the installers, and it is important to emphasise the point I made in my statement, which is we want the extra money, which is £1.5 billion allocated at the budget, to help those installers because they are going to face a difficult transition, and I think he raises an important issue. On the cost of electricity, as I said in reply to the opposition spokesperson, the measures that my right honourable friend the Chancellor took in the budget are important for cutting the cost of electricity, and all of the evidence I've seen says you can get with the right tariff, running a heat pump is cheaper than running a boiler. Obviously, we continue to look at whether there are other ways we can bring the cost of electricity down, and my honourable friend is right about that. And just on his point about insulation, I think my maxim here, Madam Deputy Speaker, is the measures that will cut bills the most are what matters to me. I'm not sort of ideological about this, whether it's insulation or heat pumps or batteries or solar, whatever it is that can give us most bang for our buck in bringing down bills.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Pippa Halings with 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. And we've been asking for the Warm Homes Plan for Christmas for the past 2 years, so it's very better late than never. Unwrapping it got some mixed feelings. You know, the Liberal Democrats have long called for an emergency home energy upgrade scheme with free insulation and heat pumps, and recently also proposals for low-interest loan schemes like these. So we really, really welcome this significant investment by the government in low-carbon heating. And it's folly for anyone to think that we can rely on Putin's Russia or Trump's America for the gas to heat our homes. So it's right for the government to help households make this shift. Every solar panel, heat pump and battery install will protect families from volatile costs of fossil fuels and make homes cheaper to both warm and cool, which is a key point too. However, I have to say I do share the concerns of the energy efficiency sector about the balance that is being struck between insulation and electrification. We've seen, as the Secretary of State has said, fuel poverty rise and rates of insulation fall over the last 5 years. And the UK has some of the least energy efficient housing in Europe, leading to serious health problems with cold, damp, Dickensian home conditions. Despite our warnings, there's still no clarity in this plan about what will replace the ECO programme, leaving supply chains in limbo and skilled installers going bankrupt. And this delay, I call this out, could leave us without an operational national fuel poverty strategy over this coming winter. We hope not, and will therefore hold the government to account on this and other things that have been mentioned that are, we need to hold you to account on this as being delayed. The gas and electricity price reform postponed again. Efficiency standards have been weakened for landlords. And whilst we encourage, thank you so much for taking on board the rooftop revolution on the back of Max Wilkinson's solar bill, but the future home standard is still missing in action. We can't afford more values. We welcome this significant investment. There is no time to waste. Thank you, Madam President.
I welcome the thanks, but obviously it's not down to me, but to the Minister. So we must stop using the word you, Secretary of State.
Well, look, I'm always glad to deliver the Liberal Democrats a late Christmas present, Madam Deputy Speaker. I agreed with some of the Honourable Lady's point, particularly about our dependence on fossil fuels and why clean energy is the way forward to give us energy security and sovereignty in a dangerous world. I want to reassure her on insulation. As I said to my honourable friend, we continue to see a really, really important role for insulation, but I hope she will agree and members of the House will agree that what matters as we invest public money is what is going to do most to tackle the affordability crisis, and that is our test. So absolutely insulation is a key part of that. On the eco-supply chain, just to expand a little bit on what I said earlier to my honourable friend, look, we do recognise, and I know this from my own personal conversations, the issues facing organisations in the supply chain, and that's why in the £1.5 billion extra, which was on top of the 13 billion or so previously allocated in the Warm Homes Plan, we're going to make sure that £1.5 billion is spent through the eco installers to help them make this transition to the new system. My honourable friend is getting to work straight away on a group representing the installers, the local authorities, who are obviously going to be responsible for the procurement and the spending, because we want to do everything we can to help the supply chain.
Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm really pleased to see this Warm Homes Plan, as a warm home for everyone was one of my key election pledges. And in my constituency of Morecambe and Loonsdale, Green Rose CIC has been helping people for years with energy efficiency and making their homes warmer. So can the Secretary of State tell me how local experts like Green Rose CIC will be used to deliver this change for our constituents?
Well, I think my honourable friend asked a really, really important question, and I congratulate Green Rose CIC for the work that they do. We absolutely see organisations like that as central to this plan, working with local authorities, working to give local people advice, also working, and I don't know whether this applies to Green Rose CIC, on our local power plan, which will come out soon, to give opportunities for local community energy schemes as well, because community ownership is a big part of it. I see organisations like that, and it really reflects the enthusiasm on the ground as crucial to this plan.
Harriet Cross. Deputy Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, my honourable friend and the Shadow Minister asked, and the Secretary of State did not manage to answer, about whether or not Chinese supply chains, slave labour supply chains, will be involved in the procurement of any aspect or any part of the solar panels involved in this scheme. Please, can the Shadow State confirm that not a single aspect of this project will come off the back of slave labour and their supply chains?
Well, I have to say to the Honourable Lady, we inherited from them I'll get to the question, the system, and we have raised the standards. We've raised the standards in the solar roadmap. Through the SSI initiative with the solar industry. We've raised the standards through GB Energy, and my honourable friend, the Minister for Energy, is working with colleagues across government to ensure that slave labour is not used in the supply chain.
Holly Billington.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. May I congratulate my right honourable friend for this Warm Homes Plan. It has been a long time coming, but maybe perhaps a little longer than the members of the opposition are prepared to admit, since I know he and I worked on something very similar way before the Tories then left and abandoned the Warm Homes ambitions that we now see fully fulfilled. 1 in 6 of the households in my constituency live in the current calculation of fuel poverty, predominantly in places like Cliftonville and Ramsgate Town Centre, where incomes are low and buildings are old. Also, incidentally, they tend to be predominantly privately rented. Would my right honourable friend consider revising the fuel poverty calculation to really reflect the truth of how many people struggle to keep their homes warm in winter and cool in summer? Will he also confirm a little bit more about the information that might be available to support the landlords to make this shift, since it actually requires 28% of my residents actually live in private rented accommodation. Will he confirm that he will support an energy social tariff to support the transition to a cheaper and cleaner form of energy in the later?
I think my honourable friend is right about this. Working with the private rented sector to raise the standards is incredibly important, and frankly we can't let the scandalous situation that affects so many private tenants carry on. I think she also makes another important point, though. We know this is a big journey of upgrading the nation's housing stock. There's a very, very long and bad legacy that we've been left. We are determined to make a difference to it.
Mr Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Orkney and Shetland are home to some of the worst levels of fuel poverty anywhere in the United Kingdom, as well as some of the largest onshore wind farms in the country. Solar panels are of limited usefulness to us because it's coldest in the winter, and in the depths of winter we might have as little as 5 hours daylight in the day. What would make a difference to us is meaningful support for community benefit or even community ownership of some of the installed wind farms that we have in the Isles, or an Isles tariff for communities like ours and in the Western Isles. When will we hear something from the Secretary of State on these ideas?
We'll shortly. I thank him for his question, really important question. We're going to shortly publish our local power plan, which is precisely about community ownership that he was talking about. We see that as having a central role. If you look at countries like Germany and Denmark, it plays much more of a role than here. We want to expand it, and we want his constituents to benefit.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It was interesting to hear the Liberal Democrats really struggling to say that they admire this policy, given that they seem to be getting everything that they want from it. And it's also disappointing to see the deserted Conservative benches for this. I offer my apologies to the shadow spokesperson, who is not with allies. But it's disappointing to hear the Conservatives move from being climate change converts to being sustainability sceptics yet again. The Conservatives left our country vulnerable to the energy price spikes, which made the last government have to spend at least £78 billion to deal with the cost of living crisis, whereas this government is investing big, and we've got Europe's biggest ever wind auction announced last week. Now we're seeing clean power from day one, new builds, new power. Does the Secretary of State agree that a major motive for this plan is to cut hundreds of pounds off bills in Bournemouth East to go solar by standard, and that only a rooftop revolution will help bring down bills but keep bills down in the long term?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. I guess the honourable gentleman on the other side will be wondering where his friends have gone and whether they're going to another political party. Let me say to him, this is absolutely about his constituents. It's absolutely about cutting bills. This is a long-term affordability crisis, and this is a long-term plan to help tackle it.
I have confidence that the Secretary of State is across his brief and doesn't need to be warmed up before a question. So get straight to the question so we can get on to the next member. Graham Ledbetter.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I welcome the additional investment in energy efficiency measures. It's a good thing. And I certainly welcome the simplification of the energy efficiency systems that people can bid into, and that can only be a good thing for consumers. It's been a veritable maze. However, the biggest barrier for many of my constituents and people across Scotland is price. They cannot invest in their home if they cannot get a decent price for their energy and deal with the cost of living that is affecting them right now in this moment with the bills that they're getting on their doorstep right now. The North of Scotland has the highest energy prices in the UK. The SNP has put forward proposals for a social tariff. Will the Secretary of State seriously consider those measures and put in place a social tariff to enable people to take advantage of these schemes?
I'd say thanks the honourable gentleman for his question. Just to respond, it's because we recognise the immediacy of the affordability crisis that we took the action we did in the budget, take £150 of costs off bills. It's because we recognise the affordability crisis that we significantly increased the numbers eligible for the warm home discount, which I think is hundreds of thousands more people in Scotland now eligible. I would point out that the Scottish Government has some responsibility here, having cut some of their own schemes in this, but we want to work with the Scottish Government and do all we can to help the honourable gentleman's constituents.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. My right honourable friend has once again pulled quite a rabbit out of the Chancellor's hat, so I congratulate him. He's clearly her favourite Secretary of State. But does he agree with me that we know what happens when we don't rely on renewables? It's the £44 billion that the previous government had to pay to subsidise bills at the same time that our constituents were struggling to pay them. I agree with what my colleague, the chair of the Designated Select Committee, said about we still need to be driving down those electricity costs. But will the Secretary of State tell us, in terms of the skill shortages that we have within the heat pump installation sector, what does he think are the key things we can do to address them? And how many heat pumps should we expect to be installed by 2030?
Secretary of State.
On 2030, 450,000 is the target we set out in this plan. On his point about skills, our skills task force is absolutely designed to do what my honourable friend said, which is to meet the skills needs, the very significant skills needs we are going to have. And I think, just to the first part of my honourable friend's question, I do think the Chancellor deserves real credit for this, because she recognised the importance of long-term public investment, which the last government singularly did not. The easy thing in difficult times is to cut public investment. She didn't do that. She's increased it, and she's investing in this area very significantly.
Taylor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I warmly welcome this plan and the ambition that the government is showing and try and dispel some of the misconceptions on the opposition benches. I'm sure we've all been out knocking on doors in our constituencies, as I was last week in Worcester Park in my constituency. And a lady came to the door in a big jacket, and I kind of let her pass because I thought she was unaware, but she wasn't, because she was in her home in a jacket because she didn't have the heating on, and I'm sure we've all experienced that. So we know how the cost of living crisis is hitting our residents, whether it's in grocery bills, whether it's in the rent, or whether it's in energy costs. Can the Minister give a bit more detail on how we're going to address those energy costs and insulation in the short term, whether there are programmes in here that can be funded for those easy wins, that we can see those leaks and those energy from existing gas boilers come down, whilst the industry spools up by getting the skills to install heat pumps, and we get the production lines in progress.
State.
I think what the honourable gentleman said at the beginning of his question is something that will resonate with every member of this House, because it's what so many people are facing, and it's a chronic and an acute cost of living crisis. It's been going on a very, very long time, and that's what makes it really hard for people. On his point about what difference we can make in the short term, that's why the £150 is important, because immediate relief is important. That's why the warm home discount is important and its expansion. And also, you know, I do encourage people watching this and members to encourage their constituents to go to the gov.uk website. People can get to their local authorities, see what schemes are available. There is money available, and we do want to get as much help out as quickly as possible to people. Sometimes this money gets underspent, actually, by local authorities. We want this money to get out and help people.
Peter Swallow.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I wonder where all the Tory MPs are. They can't all be having cosy chats with Robert Jenrick.
Roast dinner.
Can I welcome this...
We do not reference members by their names, but by their constituencies. Get straight to the questions.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I do apologise. I welcome the Warm Homes plan, not only the support it will give for the most in-need constituents in Bracknell Forest, but actually the support for everyone to make important upgrades to their home, including with low and no interest loans for solar panel upgrades. Can I ask my right and honourable friend what thoughts he's given to supporting leaseholders to make sure that they are able to make these changes and aren't held back by freeholders turning down sensible and common sense requests?
Absolutely, we see leaseholders as being eligible for this help. It's very, very important that they are. And I think my honourable friend speaks very compellingly about this issue with his constituency experience. We want as many people as possible to be helped as quickly as possible with this plan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Despite the fact that these plans will not apply to Northern Ireland, I do welcome the aspect of the plans which apply to rented accommodation. Maybe the Minister could confirm whether or not there will be a bar net consequential for Northern Ireland. But does he recognise that even with these plans, there will still be an upfront cost which will require low-income families to borrow, and that will be an impediment? And secondly, the running costs will still be higher despite what he has done in electricity prices, because that's been offset by the cost of his net zero policies, which cause electricity to be dearer than gas.
I thought for the first time in 20 years we were going to agree completely, but we nearly got there. 3/4 agreement is better than we've done in 20 years. Look, on the first part of what he says, look, we recognise that there are Barnett consequentials have already been allocated for this, and we would encourage, obviously it's for the decision for the government of Northern Ireland to make their own, the executive to make their own decisions on how they spend their money. We do want the Warm Homes Agency to work with people with devolved governments as well, and we also want to look at how zero and low interest loan scheme can work across the United Kingdom too. So we want to work as much as possible with devolved governments to help people across the UK.
Anderson.
Statement. I particularly welcome the new requirements placed on private landlords, which would be a huge boost to tenants in the Buckingham and Bletchley constituency. My question concerns rural communities who often face high energy costs and other practical barriers, such as the limited availability of those who would install things like heat pumps. So can he set out a bit more detail about how he will be working, his department will be working with relevant local authorities and suppliers to ensure that rural communities like those in North Buckinghamshire aren't left behind?
Next state.
I think my honourable friend asked a really important question, and I want to sort of tell him a nerdy fact, which is, I like nerdy facts, it's in character. Nearly half of the people who've got the boiler upgrade scheme are actually in rural areas, and I think I'm right in saying that a third are off the gas grid. And so I think this tells you something actually about the kind of appetite there is, particularly in rural communities and particularly those off the gas grid, to find alternatives. And so hopefully the continuation and indeed expansion of these schemes will help his constituents.
Dr. Ellie Chowns.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome the publication of the long-awaited Warm Homes Plan. The Green Party has tirelessly campaigned for many of the things in here, a more consistent, nationwide, clearer, straightforward system for people to access support, better inspection and accountability for installers, and of course solar panels as default on roofs. However, 2 questions for the Secretary of State. First of all, this is supposed to be a warm homes plan, but there's a lot of focus on energy supply improvements and less than I would expect on energy demand management, insulation, which is crucial to reducing bills. Why is that? And secondly, the scale of this plan is still nowhere close to the need. 2.7 million households in fuel poverty, according to the government's own statistics, 6 million households, according to other statistics. This plan aims to address 1 million of those households only. It's a 25% cut on the previous amount promised for this work. Why is that, and what will the government do to reach those millions of additional households who won't be...
I'm sort of half thank her for her question. Look, on the second question, look, I have to say, by anyone's reckoning, this is a very substantial investment. I mean, it's multiple times more than was done in the last Parliament, and I think there does need to be recognition of that. I will say to the Honourable Lady, I recognise that there is further to go. This is going to help 5 million homes, and there are a lot more homes that we also want to help, but I think it is, by anyone's measure, making a difference. I just want to go on to her first point, because I want to sort of reassure her on this point. You know, we absolutely see the value of fabric and insulation as part of this agenda, but I think the focus has got to be what works to cut bills, because that's what our constituents want us to focus on.
Rachel Hopkins.
And I too warmly welcome the Warm Homes Plan, which will benefit families in Luton South and South Bedfordshire, especially the measures targeted at low-income families to help lift them out of fuel poverty. So does the Secretary of State agree with me that after a decade of failure from the party opposite, it is this Labour government that recognises the cost of living crisis and is taking definitive action through this record public investment in home upgrades to help reduce bills for good?
I think my honourable friend puts it very well. We are turning the page on a decade of failure. And look, I think it's really, really important that the public know that we get the scale of the crisis that they are facing, this long-term crisis which this government came into office and is determined to deal with. And we're not over-claiming on this plan, but it will make a difference. And what we are about is making a difference to people in the cost that they face so that we can help tackle the cost of living crisis.
Helen Morgan. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the Secretary of State has already pointed out, in rural areas we tend to have an older housing stock, lots of people off-grid, and they are very keen to see upgrades made to their home, and we welcome this announcement. In my constituency, a number of people engaged with the Eco4 scheme, and unfortunately they have been let down badly by rogue installers who've left their bills higher, their homes damaged, and who have taken money from the taxpayer. Can the Secretary of State describe to me what he's doing to ensure that that doesn't happen again this time, and also what remedy might be available for those people who have been let down by those rogue actors under Eco4?
Secretary of State.
Well, look, any cases, and I do say this to the honourable lady, should be brought to the attention of my honourable friend, because, you know, I feel a deep sense of sympathy for the people who've been badly affected by Eco4, by the problems in Eco4, and it's obviously something that was brought to our attention when we came to office, and we are determined to have remediation for all of the people affected. I think that has got to be the fundamental principle here, that people through no fault of their own have been badly let down by the system, and they deserve to have that made good for them. On her point about how do we stop it happening in the future, I mean, I'd say a couple of things. First of all, our experience is that local authority schemes had many fewer problems and had much higher standards of safeguards. And secondly, the point of the Warm Homes Agency is to have a proper system of regulation which government oversees. I mean, that is the fundamental principle here. We had a piecemeal, privatised, fragmented system, and that is partly what led to the problems. We can't allow that to continue.
Matt Rodder.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Could I wholeheartedly welcome this announcement from the Secretary of State, and also welcome his work over many years in this very important policy area. This is an enormous issue in my constituency, with many older houses, many people struggling to pay their bills, so I wholeheartedly welcome it. I wondered if he might say a little bit also about the very important work that many local authorities are doing. In my area, Reading Borough Council, the Labour-run council, has invested heavily in new council houses, and shortly is due to open 300 new council houses built to a very high standard to ensure that people live in warm homes and have secure family finances with lower heating bills.
State.
I think my honourable friend raised a really important point. I was with all the mayors on Monday, talking to them about their role in relation to the Warm Homes Plan. And look, whether it's local authorities or whether it's regional mayors, they have the best sense about what their areas need, and they are the people to help coordinate and make this happen. And the truth is, Madam Deputy Speaker, you know, in reality, lots of people have rightly said we need to do more, you know, that this is good, but could we go further? This is going to be a 15, 20-year project for the country. You know, and I think that is the way to think about this, which is this is a national mission to transform our housing stock. It's long overdue. We're making a really, really important start, and there will be further to go.
Lisa Roberts.
And there is much to welcome with the Warm Homes Plan. Wales, of course, has the oldest housing stock in Europe, with around a third of houses built before 1919. Because of this, Wales is rightly a net beneficiary of eco schemes, with 6% of all eco measures and 12% of eco4, and he'll recognise that this is higher than the Barnett consequential funding based on population share. So can he explain how the Warm Homes funding for Wales will be sufficient to meet the extreme challenges facing Welsh homeowners?
Well, look, clearly, you know, this scheme is really, really important for Wales and for the impact. Just if you take the boiler upgrade scheme, for example, and we are determined to work with the Welsh Government to make sure that this really makes a difference for people in Wales, and that is the work that my honourable friend is doing.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I welcome this £15 billion investment to tackle energy security and make sure that family finances are protected from fossil fuel price spikes. There is a fantastic organisation in my constituency, co-founded by a lady called Jane, called Women in Retrofit, which focuses on getting more women and more girls into the retrofit industry. We simply won't be able to meet these targets without using that part of the workforce. So can I ask the Secretary of State what he has considered around getting more women and girls into this?
I congratulate Jane. I congratulate women in retrofit. I think they sound like ideal people for my honourable friend's task force to talk to. I think my honourable friend makes such a powerful point about the diversity of opportunities there are here, and we want as many people as possible to take advantage of them.
Edward Morello.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. As the co-chair of the APPG on Net Zero, I want to welcome the expansion of the funding for solar and for heat pumps. As somebody who, prior to coming to this place, spent the better part of a decade riding the solar coaster, I know for a fact that the biggest drag on the run out of solar and expansion of solar is the skills shortage. So I just wonder if the Secretary of State would fill us in on what the government plans to do and what other departments will be doing in order to ensure that the skills are there for these installations to go ahead.
State.
Well, Honourable Gentleman makes a really important point. The solar roadmap set out some of the work that we're doing, but the whole point of the task force, and I think this is a much more intentional way of thinking about the workforce challenges compared to the previous government, is to make sure that we do have the workforce in place. You know, the fact that we saw over 200,000 installations last year does show the level of demand for rooftop solar. When you think about some of the eco organisations that are sort of struggling with the transition, they could be part of this, but we want to make sure that happens.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Look, I'm really pleased to see this plan. It's such a welcome change from the lukewarm gusts of hot air that have come from the opposition when they were in government. It's practical, it's pragmatic, and it's deliverable. Lots of people in my constituency will welcome how fair it is as well, particularly for people on lower incomes, but middle incomes, house owners, renters, everyone. But the worry for people in my constituency is going to be that we have a local authority in Kent County Council that is committed to climate denialism. They're obsessed with it. And how can people in my constituency of Sittingbourne and Sheppey get the advantages for their houses, for their jobs, for their employment, for the tradespeople that really want to be part of this?
State.
I think my honourable friend makes a really important point, and I would say to the council that he talks about, leave your dogma at the door and help local people. Work with us to help local people.
Bob Mohammed.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Labour-run Kirklees Council failed to apply for the first round of government warm homes local grants last year. In a cost of living crisis, this is an unforgivable abdication of duty and a total failure by Labour councillors, resulting in a loss of between £1.5 to £7 million that was secured by neighbouring authorities. I do welcome the government's warm homes plan, but my question to the Secretary of State is, will he confirm that the cost of this warm homes plan will not be added to monthly household bills across the country? And will he ensure that, unlike under the previous government, where my constituents were left with incomplete and dangerous and ineffective installations that they had to pay thousands to remove, that they will not be faced with the same issue?
I mean, first of all, it sounds like negative propaganda against Kirklees Council, which I'm sceptical about. But secondly, on the wider issue, I would say that the whole point of this is we're doing this through public investment, and that's the decision the Chancellor took, and I think it's the right decision.
Gareth Snell.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I really welcome the announcement today. Stoke-on-Trent is routinely ranked as #1 in the country for fuel poverty. We have old terrace housing, often with single glaze and small yards, so spacing for heat pumps and these things is a concern, but I'm sure we'll work that out. We are very fortunate that Fiona Miller and the Beat the Coal team, who have met recently with the Minister for Consumer Energy, does a lot of work on the ground. So can I ask the Secretary of State, he says this will be run through local authorities. Where we have good partnerships on the ground in localities already doing the work, how can they be involved in this programme? And he also says that he is aware of the challenges that the suppliers of the Eco Grant face for having lost those contracts. In my constituency of Stoke-on-Trent, that's lots of jobs that have been lost now. How soon will the information be available to them so they can start workforce planning for the delivery of this programme so they can get people back into work delivering the upgrades we need?
On his first point about the partnerships, we want to use local partnerships that are already in place. On the point about the eco installers, that's the work that my honourable friend, the Minister, will be cracking on with. The reason why we didn't want to just say we're going to allocate the money and it needs to go through the eco installers is we want to make sure it happens, and we will urgently work on that.
Questions need to be much shorter, as do the answers from the Secretary of State. Shulkit Adam.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for his statement and welcome much of it, including the fact that he recognises the challenging facing suppliers and the fact that it's going to support 180,000 jobs. But can I ask, will the government commit to working with small local businesses, helping the local economy, or for this scheme, to deliver this scheme, or will it be just for the big boys?
SMEs will be crucial to this scheme.
Luke Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. With cost of living the #1 issue for my constituents in Basingstoke, I welcome this record investment in warmer homes and lower bills. Measures like zero and low interest loans for solar batteries and heat pumps, greater protections for renters and solar on new homes are all measures that will make a huge amount of difference. But can I ask the Secretary of State when my constituents will be able to begin applying for those low and zero interest loans, because for many of them there is no time to wait.
Yeah. Secretary of State.
Well, my honourable friend raises an important point, and we're going to be working urgently with the banks and others. Indeed, I think there's a roundtable being convened next week to work out how quickly we can get on with this process. We want to do this as soon as possible. It will take time, and if there's one lesson from the past, it's we need to get this right, because we don't want a Green Deal and all of that malarkey happening. So we want to get it right, but we do want to do it as quickly as we can.
State.
Speaker. I particularly welcome the investment in the low-cost loans for solar panels. It's really going to boost jobs. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, the grid is not currently resilient enough to cope when our EV cars are providing microgeneration and, as a raise, get more efficient and hit the target for DNO approval. So what assurance does the Warm Homes Plan provide about investment in the grid and the capacity of DNOs so the revolution is successful and not a failed bright idea?
Well, look, we're doing big investment in the transmission infrastructure, and I would really urge all honourable members locally to be supporting that, not opposing it. And we're also doing this big reordering of the grid queue, which is crucial because that means you then get the projects in the places that you need them.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and can I welcome this significant investment. My constituents were badly let down by the previous faulty cavity wall insulation scheme and then were chased for adverse legal costs. So ensuring confidence in future schemes will be really important. Can I ask how we're supporting those really good suppliers under the ECO scheme and how quickly that transition will be in place in supporting them?
I think my honourable friend makes a really important point about the fragility of consumer confidence. You've got to support it. And really the point of this oversight group that my honourable friend will chair is to make sure we do as much as we can to support those good eco-suppliers.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I warmly welcome the new minimum energy efficiency standards for privately rented homes in the long-awaited Warm Homes Plan. But could the Secretary of State lay out how he's going to ensure that landlords don't simply pass on the costs of meeting those standards to renters? Could he perhaps ask his colleague, the Housing Secretary, to introduce rent controls in order to make sure that renters can afford to actually rent these new warm homes?
Dave?
I'm not going to do that, but what I will say to her is that, look, lots of landlords already meet these standards, first point. Secondly, we do want to provide some help to landlords to make this happen. And I think that this is an important point. You know, some of the schemes we've been talking about will be available to landlords. So through a combination of the fact that some landlords are already doing it and this help, we're confident that this will actually reduce costs and won't lead to higher rents.
Madam Speaker, I'm sure the Secretary of State will agree it's not just about having the right policy, which I'm sure this is, but also having the right implementation. My constituents, Mr and Mrs Henry Smith, had a heat pump installed under a previous government scheme. The heat pump was so badly installed by Greenland Living that the installer had to offer a backup gas boiler to get the home hot enough. Greenland Living went bust. So will the Secretary of State now give an assurance that in future, under his schemes, there will be an assurance to anyone having an installation done, it will be done by competent companies, and that if it does go wrong, the government will stand behind people in making sure rectification work is done to a proper standard?
Absolutely, yes. I'm so sorry to hear about the experience of his constituents, Madam Deputy Speaker. We've got to make sure that we don't let this kind of thing happen.
Manuela Patigala.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. In my constituency of Stratford-on-Avon, there are hundreds of residential park homes which are occupied by elderly residents, and these are very energy-inefficient homes and very complex to retrofit. And previous home upgrade grants were quite ineffective and bureaucratic because of the batching application for process of ready to retrofit homes. So they didn't reach many park homes. So will the Secretary of State ensure that the Warm Homes Plan will effectively deliver also for park homes residents?
As a constituency MP with park homes in my constituency, I'm very, very sympathetic to the issues facing people who live in park homes. I think in order to give her a proper answer, why don't we take that away, and I'm going to pass that on to my honourable friend.
Abdullah Mohammed. Speaker, I too warmly welcome this plan and the investment that's coming with this, and strongly commend the leadership of the Secretary of State on this particular area. It's great news that small businesses are the vehicle that will drive home the upgrade in our local communities, but they too have struggled. I've got over 5,000 small businesses in Sheffield Central. So can the Secretary of State outline how small businesses in Sheffield Central will benefit from this plan?
Well, I think my honourable friend is right about this. They are eligible for the boiler upgrade scheme, and there's substantial investment in that. We want them to benefit from the solar loans as well, and we also want, through the procurement through local authorities, to help them too. I think she's really right about this is the massive job creation opportunity, but we do need the SME sector to get its fair share.
Amanda Martin.
I too congratulate my right honourable friend on a deliverable warmer homes plan. On Friday I'm hosting a utility cost of living event with energy and water suppliers and banks because Portsmouth North residents were let down dramatically by the last government. Does the Secretary of State agree that home upgrades are one of the most effective ways to bring down energy bills, particularly for families where we've got 5,000 households in Portsmouth North officially living in fuel poverty and more struggling with energy costs because of prefabs, Victorian or older buildings need less efficient heating?
Well, I congratulate my honourable friend on convening people locally on the crucial issue of the cost of living crisis, and I'm sure that will be really effective and important event that she is hosting. And she is absolutely right. Home upgrades for her constituents in Portsmouth North and elsewhere are absolutely the long-term answer to the cost of living crisis.
Ayub Khan.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I certainly welcome this statement to the House, especially that this scheme will now ensure there's a degree of localisation and devolution in terms of decision-making, and will hopefully get rid of the problems that we saw in the last government scheme. In Birmingham Perry-Barr, we have thousands of residents which have fallen victim to substandard work. So can I ask the Secretary of State, he's mentioned that there will be remediation. Will this remediation allow them to apply for this new scheme?
State.
Well, look, I think the remediation of the previous work should happen sort of whatever. It shouldn't require them to have to apply. There should be a process with Trustmark, who are the overseers, I think in the case that he's talking about. But look, this is something that my department is very, very focused on. It would have been much better if this mess had not been created in the first place, but we're determined to clean it up. And if he has areas where it's not being cleaned up, please do them, draw them to my attention of my honourable friend.
Jonathan Brash.
Deputy Speaker, 15% of Hartlepool constituents live in fuel poverty. Many more go without in order to pay the outrageous energy bills that they face, with many vulnerable children and elderly people living in properties that are too cold and too damp. That's not acceptable to me, and I know it's not acceptable to the Secretary of State. So can he say a little bit more about how we ensure that the welcome measures in this plan reach the most vulnerable people in communities like Hartlepool and beyond?
State.
My honourable friend speaks incredibly eloquently, and I'm sure it will resonate with people right across this House when they think about their constituents who are poor and vulnerable and facing a choice between heating and eating. I think the key thing here is to get this money out to local authorities and indeed combined authorities who are the best people to deliver this. Because I think that is repeatedly, if you look back over the previous years, that is the experience, and that is the way to get the help most urgently to people.
Jim Shannon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I thank the Secretary of State very much for his statement. That really is good news, and we all welcome the Warm Homes Plan and help for families. However, I have some concerns, and I want to ask the Secretary of State if I can ask him, please. Can the Secretary of State outline how the devolved nations, I know the Barnett Consequential has been confirmed, that's good news, but the Executive will be the administrative body in Northern Ireland. So how will they administer the access and to deliver the scheme? And also, how will the so-called, I ask this question very, very gently, the so-called squeezed middle-class families, middle-income families who are highly taxed due to fiscal drag, obtain help for insulation? For the middle class, for those squeezed middle class who struggle to heat, and pay their mortgage-owned homes. Thank you.
Well, I thank the honourable gentleman for his important question, and I can tell him that the Minister met the Minister for Communities in the Northern Ireland Executive yesterday to talk about how we can work together, for example, on the Warm Homes Agency, which is UK-wide, hopefully on the solar loans as well. We want to do absolutely everything we can to work with the Northern Ireland Executive to help serve the people of Northern Ireland.
Jonathan Davies.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Speaker. I very much welcome the publication of this £15 billion Warm Homes Plan, which is going to get people's bills down and reduce our impact on the environment. But I was particularly interested to hear in the £90 million which has been set aside for the development of heat pumps, because Valent, one of the world's leading manufacturers of heat pumps, is based in Belper in my constituency. So I'm going to ask him what steps is he taking to ensure that £90 million is spent well? Will he engage with Valent to make sure that we can draw upon their experience, and can we use that money to create more good jobs in this very important sector in Derbyshire?
Yeah, we love Valent and what they do. My honourable friend loves it so much she's going tomorrow to visit. It's part of the 90 million heat pump investment accelerator programme, and it is absolutely about working with companies like Valent so we can get domestic manufacturing in this country, which I'm sure is shared right across the House.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I warmly welcome the statement by the Secretary of State today. I had a visit from Citizens Advice Harlow yesterday, and they told me what we probably already know, that the #1 issue facing residents in Harlow is damp, mould and fuel poverty. My homes in Harlow weren't built in 1919 because Harlow didn't exist in 1919, but there's a unique problem that new towns do have, that they were all built at the same time, sometimes quickly after the war. So actually they're suffering for these problems at the same time. So I can ask the Secretary of State to take the new town challenge into consideration, and can he detail how this will make a huge difference for residents in my constituency, Harlow? Sorry.
My honourable friend speaks about a really important issue, and I was conscious of this from other experiences of visits that I've made. I think my honourable friend the Minister heard his statement. I think we do need to think about this, because there are areas like Harlow and elsewhere where they have particular challenges.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. There are 44,000 homes in York which are energy insecure, so we'll really welcome today's announcement. However, that is talking about scale, and scaling the skills is really important. So can the Secretary of State say how he's working with the Education Secretary, ensuring further education has the resources it needs to scale the workforce for the future?
My honourable friend speaks with typical eloquence on these issues. This came up at the Mayor's meeting on Monday, and about how we ensure that particularly the FE sector is geared up to help train people for these opportunities. It's something absolutely we'll work with Skills England and the mayors on, and it's something that my honourable friend will be taking forward.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. The Secretary of State will recall a visit to Derby where he officially opened Valiant's heat source cylinder facility. Could he outline what today's announcement will mean to build on this, creating more clean energy jobs in Derby and across the UK?
Well, I very much enjoyed the visit to Valent, and it was incredibly impressed by what they were doing. And programmes like the Heat Pump Investment Accelerator are absolutely designed, as I said earlier, to help companies like Valent to capitalise on this growing market.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I too welcome the warm home plans to lower constituents' heating bills and for the biggest home upgrade in British history. So how is the Secretary of State ensuring that clean energy is not only the right choice for clean emissions, but also for cutting bills, while avoiding past Conservative failures on insulation that left tens of thousands of homes with severe damp, mould and structural damage?
Well, look, I think my honourable friend speaks with very good sense on this. This is a huge opportunity for people. We're seeing record demand, and the question for this House and the question for all of us is, do we want that just to be for the wealthiest or for everyone? The point of the public investment is to make it within the reach of ordinary families. That's what is at the heart of this plan.
Amanda Hack.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I thank the Secretary of State for his statement and commitment to improve energy efficiency in people's homes and reduce bills for constituents like mine in North West Leicestershire. As the Chair of the APPG on Future Homes, Skills and Innovation, I'd welcome more details on the task force identified in the plan to ensure we have the skills and the innovation to meet the ambition so my constituents can benefit from warmer homes as well as the good jobs that this sector can provide.
My honourable friend put it very well, and I'm sure the Minister will be happy to talk to her about how we can make sure that this task force does what she thinks is necessary to get the workforce we need.
Final question, Anna Dixon.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'd like to thank the Secretary of State on behalf of the over 5,000 households in Shipley constituency who experience fuel poverty. Constituents have also benefited from Saltaire Retrofit Reimagined, a community initiative focused on improving energy efficiency within the Saltaire World Heritage Site. Would the Secretary of State assure residents of listed properties like those in Saltaire that they can too benefit from these upgrades?
Secretary of State.
Yeah, absolutely, and I pay tribute to the work of my honourable friend on this issue. We want these benefits to be spread as widely as possible. My honourable friend says he's going to be shortly visiting with my honourable friend to see this. Just as this is the final question, Madam Deputy Speaker, I just want to say one other thing, which is I just want to thank the civil service team that has worked on this plan, because over many, many months they have worked tirelessly on this plan, and I really want to put on record my thanks to them and indeed for members, and we look forward to engaging with people across the House on the implementation of this plan.
That is the end of the statement on Warm Homes Plan. I'll give the front benches a moment or two to shuffle over. Next one called. If the Minister is ready, we come to the second statement on water white paper. Minister.
With permission, Madam Deputy Speaker, I would like to make a statement on the publication of the Government's Water White Paper, A New Vision for Water. The paper sets out a once-in-a-generation reform, putting consumers and the environment first and building a water system fit for the future. For too long, the last Conservative government turned a blind eye. Perhaps that's why there isn't a single backbencher from the Conservative Party in the chamber to discuss this issue. They neglected the needs of people and the environment. The result, Madam Deputy Speaker, a whole system failure. Companies profiting at customers' expense, vital infrastructure left to crumble, record levels of pollution in our waterways, and public trust destroyed. No wonder none of them have turned up to sit in the backbenches. Oh, we may have one or two. Madam Deputy Speaker, this government inherited this terrible failure, and we are not shying away from it. Every family in this country deserves clean water from their taps, seas safe for their children to swim in, and bills that are fair and affordable. This government is turning the page on that Tory failure. Our goal is simple: a water system that delivers safe and secure water supplies, better water quality, and a fair deal for customers and indeed for investors. Within weeks of coming into office, this government asked Sir John Cunliffe to lead an independent water commission. Sir John met over 150 stakeholders, including environmental groups, investors, members of both houses and local communities. His call for evidence received more than 50,000 responses, much more interest from people out there than there is from the Conservative Party. I would like to thank Sir John and all those who contributed, including honourable and right honourable members. The White Paper sets out our response to his recommendations. Madam Deputy Speaker, the Cunliffe Review was vital, but we did not wait for its conclusions to act. In our first year in office, we laid the foundations for the transformation this White Paper sets out. We passed the Water Special Measures Act to give the regulator the power to ban bonuses for polluting water bosses and issue automatic fines for pollution. We ring-fence the money from consumers' bills so it can only be spent on fixing and upgrading infrastructure and improving water quality, not diverted to pay bonuses or dividends. We secured a historic investment of £104 billion of private sector investment to rebuild the water network, and we established the brand new Water Delivery Task Force to get spades in the ground, fast-track delivery of new infrastructure projects and drive economic growth. Madam Deputy Speaker, this white paper builds on these strong foundations and sets a new vision for water in this country. Our reform delivers 3 fundamental shifts. First, from fragmentation to coordination. Today, responsibility for water is scattered across 4 different regulators. The result is confusion, duplication, and regulatory gaps. We will change that. We will abolish Ofwat. We will create a new, more powerful regulator integrating economic and environmental regulation. And we will hold water companies to account, moving away from a system of self-monitoring where water companies have been marking their own homework to a more proactive and preventative approach. There will be nowhere to hide for poorly performing water companies. We will introduce an MOT approach for water company infrastructure, requiring maintenance checks on pipes, pumps and water treatment works. A chief engineer and engineering capability in the new regulator so that decisions are grounded in practical understanding. A new supervisory approach, holding companies to account in detail and recognising the different challenges they face. And a new performance improvement regime which will give the regulator the power to step in faster and put things right earlier. This is prevention-first regulation. However, regulation alone will not clean up our rivers, lakes and seas. We need everyone with a stake in our waterways pulling in the same direction. New reforms for regional planning will bring councils, water companies, farmers and developers together to tackle local pollution, manage water resources and support housing growth. This will strengthen community voices in the water system and drive greater use of nature-based solutions. Second, a shift from corporate interest to public interest. We must never lose sight of who this reform is for, customers and the environment. We will introduce an independent water ombudsman to resolve consumer disputes fairly. We will keep bills affordable with the wider rollout of smart meters to help those who need it most. And a new water efficiency label on every appliance. So when customers buy a washing machine or a shower, they will know exactly what it will cost, not just to buy that, but to run it to help bring their bills down. We are also cracking down on pollution at its source. We will tighten agricultural standards, including on sludge spreading. We will double funding for catchment partnerships, harnessing the power of nature to protect our rivers. Third and finally, Madam Deputy Speaker, a shift from short-term thinking to long-term planning. For too long, the water sector has lurched from one 5-year price review to the next, with no clear picture of where we are headed. We will publish a transition plan to provide a clear, simple roadmap for water companies, investors and the regulators. The plan will set out how the next price review delivers on these reforms, how we drive better coordination between existing regulators during the transition, and how we will make leadership appointments at the earliest opportunity to the new regulators board, including a chair designate. Madam Deputy Speaker, for too long, the previous Conservative government turned a blind eye to water system failure. Infrastructure was neglected, pollution went unchecked, and public trust was betrayed. The White Paper draws a line under that era. The paper lays the groundwork for our upcoming water bill and puts us on a new path. A path where water companies act responsibly, where customers get the service they deserve, where investors can invest with confidence, and where there are clean rivers, lakes and seas that we can all enjoy. Madam Deputy Speaker, the British public voted for change, and we are delivering that change, building a system fit for the future. I commend this statement to the House.
I call the Shadow Secretary of State, Victoria Atkins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. And may I thank the Secretary of State for advance copy of her statement. Indeed, may I welcome the Secretary of State to the Chamber. It's not often that she puts an appearance in. From the publication of the Minette Batters report to the animal welfare strategy published the 2 days before Christmas Eve, to the family farm tax fiasco, the Secretary of State has been noticeable by her absence. Indeed, she only intervened on the South East water crisis 7 days ago, months after Tunbridge Wells, East Grinstead and other areas have been suffering from that crisis. And she talks about this statement. Why does she have so little pride in her own water white paper? She announced this to the press on Monday. We were waiting for the statement. We were ready for it. No statement. They were, however, able to cancel the government's business on the public accountability legislation. That is ironic. We were waiting for a statement yesterday, no statement, and today she has finally given a statement on this white paper because there was an urgent question. And so when it comes to scrutiny and accountability, I think the Secretary of State should be a little bit careful before she criticises others for their chamber presence. Now, that being said, Madam Deputy Speaker, we do welcome, cautiously, elements of these proposals. Indeed, many of the measures the government have taken on water match our plans from before the 2024 election. When we entered government in 2010, only 7% of storm overflows were monitored by the previous Labour government. Now that stands at 100%. The Water Special Measures Act last year repackaged Conservative regulatory proposals such as banning unfair bonuses for water bosses, and we welcome that. And the so-called private investment that the Secretary of State keeps referring to is in fact paid for by bill payers. So let's not pretend otherwise. This investment, although it's needed, it's being paid for by all of our constituents through their bills. Now, talking about delay, in June and July last year, Sir John Cunliffe and his team published their review of the water sector. That report contained 88 recommendations. How many of the 88 recommendations are accepted by the government and included in the Water White Paper? Given that the Secretary of State for Energy has just announced £15 billion worth of taxpayers' money is to be spent on heat pumps and solar bills, which, to put it in context, is equivalent to most of the police funding for England and Wales, can she tell us how much taxpayer and bill payer money has been allocated to this white paper, and whether and how, over what time frame, these taxes and these bills will be used to pay for the work in this white paper? Can she confirm whether the government will extend environmental permit regimes to cattle farmers? And if so, how does she intend to ensure that the beef sector, which is already being hit by higher taxes under this government, the abrupt halt of farm funding, which has not been replaced, and the family farm tax fiasco, can she tell us how she hopes to ensure that the beef sector is not sunk by thousands of pounds worth of extra costs each year? How will the Secretary of State make sure that infrastructure is upgraded to ensure that catastrophic failures, such as those seen under South East Water in the last 2 months, do not happen again? And a glaring gap in the government's rhetoric on water is conserving and ensuring water security. That means improving supply. How and when will the government improve water security? Now, given the minister's habits of missing their own deadlines, can she give an ironclad commitment that the transition plan will be published in parliamentary time this year? How long will the transition take? People expect change in the water sector and are beginning to tire of the sloth-like way in which this government conducts itself. The opposition fully support efforts by the government to hold water companies to account, building on the work of the last Conservative government to improve water quality and to deliver meaningful reform of the sector. We just need the government to get on with it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I can say to the Right Honourable Lady, I will not take any lectures from the Conservative Party. Not only do they can't be bothered to turn up for this statement, which shows an absolute disregard for the concerns of the public, who are very concerned about the levels of pollution in our waterways. I will answer her questions. We have done more in 18 months than they did in 14 years, so I will not take any lectures from her. I am proud of our Water White Paper. I am proud that my predecessor commissioned somebody of the stature of Sir John Cunliffe and appointed the Independent Water Commission to do the most fundamental review of our water system since privatisation that happened under their Thatcher government. She asked how many recommendations we are taking forward. The vast majority of recommendations we are taking forward, and more, because we are looking at agricultural pollution, which we didn't ask Sir John to look at, but the Water White Paper does talk about tackling agricultural pollution, and I'm not going to shy away from that. We are working in partnership with farmers, the NFU and others, because it is an important source of water pollution. I will not again take lectures from her about the ELMS programme when they underspent the farming budget. They couldn't even bother to get the money out the door. She asks about infrastructure being upgraded. The White Paper introduces a system that moves away from water companies marking their own homework to a regulator with teeth that absolutely gets a grip on the delivery of that £104 billion investment in infrastructure. And under their government, the pipes and the pumps, they were left in a shocking state of disrepair because there was not the regulation and the strong regulator that we need. That's what this Water White Paper and the upcoming water bill will deliver. She talks about improving water supply. It's absolutely correct. Maybe we can agree on something, that we have seen very poor performance from South East Water in recent weeks. And I was there last week to meet with constituents of the Honourable Member for Tunbridge Wells. She said, should I have gone earlier? Did she bother to go? Well, listen, this is a privatised industry because of decisions made in 1989. I called on the regulator, Ofwat, to examine the licence conditions and whether they had been breached by South East Water. I don't remember her saying any such thing. I have also said that I've hauled in the chair of South East Water to ask for an urgent investigation of what happened last week and the week before, but also for 2 weeks before Christmas. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, this Water White Paper is the most ambitious reform in a generation to our water system, severely needed because of the blind eye that they took when they were in government and the record levels of pollution in our waterways.
Do you agree?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I very much welcome this white paper because right across the country, customers have been failed by their water company, but all too often, when turning to Ofwat for support and to hold executives to account, they've been met with bureaucracy and a weak response. So would the Secretary of State confirm that the creation of a new combined powerful water ombudsman set out in this white paper will finally give customers a route to resolve complaints quickly when companies fail to deliver this most basic of public services?
Secretary of State.
Well, I agree with my honourable friend, and that is the reason that the main focus of our reforms is to create a single, more powerful, integrated regulator, because at the moment, as I said in my statement, we have duplication, but we also have gaps, and we have consumers that are not being served well. So we need a regulator that gets a grip on the investment in maintaining our water infrastructure, that gets a grip on bearing down on pollution incidents that we've already made a start on, but the new regulator will have more teeth and more power to do so. So he's absolutely right to say that we need that single regulator, that more powerful integrated regulator, to ensure we deliver better outcomes for consumers and the environment.
Liberal Democrat spokesperson Sarah Dyke.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Whilst some proposals of this white paper are welcome, it doesn't go far enough to guarantee the promised fundamental reforms. Record sewage spills of over 45 5,000 hours were recorded in Glastonbury and Somerton last year. The public are left in the dark as the government refuses to record the true scale of the volume of sewage dumped, rather than just the duration. Fat cat retention payments continue as water companies evade the 2025 ban on bonuses. Former Wessex Water CEO landed a £170,000 bonus through their parent company, YTL, with Ofwat apparently powerless to support it. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, why does the government refuse to address the failed ownership model that has allowed pollution, underinvestment and profiteering to persist for decades? And will the Minister listen to Liberal Democrat calls for water companies to become mutually owned public benefit corporations?
I thank her for, I think, some support for the White Paper and what she has said. I think we both share real concerns about the status quo. What I would say to her on mutual ownership is that I don't really hear a plan from the Liberal Democrats as to how to get to that point. Hear me out. If it involves whole-scale nationalisation, given that these are private companies, then that would cost around £100 billion and would be legally complex and take years of wrangling through the courts. My focus is on improving the status quo, on ensuring that we are tackling levels of pollution, which she rightly says are still happening. We've already got now, from January last year, 100% of storm overflows are being monitored. So we are shining a light on some of this pollution. We've still got a way to go, but we are bearing down on the pollution that she rightly talks about. But my solution to this crisis and this issue is to make sure that we have a complete overhaul of regulation, of the regulators, and the way that consumers are not at the moment put at the centre of things. So we protect the consumer in a much more meaningful way by introducing a water ombudsman with statutory powers. So we are making some progress and we will make more. And I know that her and I agree on some things. We may disagree on some of the details, but we're absolutely determined to deliver a system that delivers better outcomes for consumers and the environment.
Deputy Speaker, those of us in this House who have sat on the Environment Select Committee and grilled the water bosses know all too well how broken this industry is. So I really welcome the government's commitment to addressing the failures of the industry with these important reforms. As the Secretary of State knows, in Hastings and Rye we've faced major water outages. In May 24, the main pipe supplying Hastings burst, leaving 30,000 homes without water for days. It also burst this Christmas, leaving people without water on Christmas Day. We since found out they got planning permission in 2007 to replace it, but sat on their hands instead of replacing it. But they are this month beginning the work to replace that pipe because of the pressure that I and this government have been putting on the water industry. And these measures introducing MOTs on broken water infrastructure will be critical for preventing that kind of thing happening in future. One of the things I have campaigned on is having clear guidance in the event of an outage. Conditions that water companies must provide, not just bottled water, but hygiene facilities, portaloos. And the committee has also recommended that. So could the Secretary of State look at that request so that we can be better prepared if outages do occur?
Can I commend her leadership on this issue? I know on Christmas Eve she was putting pressure on Southern Water. She was concerned about the outages that happened previously, but also that were likely to occur. She's absolutely right. We need more emphasis on ensuring that companies like Southern Water are investing in the infrastructure that is needed to prevent these outages in the first place. We're moving from a system of fix on failure to prevention, and that's what this white paper is all about.
Alistair Carmichael.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Can I welcome what's in the white paper? It should lead to more effective regulation, but just a couple of words of caution. First of all, the Drinking Water Inspectorate is the only part of this setup that works well, so folding it into a new regulator should not lose that ability. And on agricultural pollution, can she work with the farmers so that this doesn't just become another stick with which to beat them? She referred to it as a whole system failure, and she's right about that. She will have seen from her recent welcome engagement with South East Water, however, that what you've got there is corporate failure, not just of management, but of non-exec directors and shareholders, because, as the Select Committee said, this is an industry that has a real problem with its culture. What we've got in the White Paper, welcome as it is not going to shift that. When will we hear from the government what they're going to do to change the culture in the industry?
Secretary of State.
Thank you, and I thank the EFRA Select Committee Chair for his thoughtful reflections. I agree with him on the Drinking Water Inspectorate. I think they do a magnificent job, and we will make sure that we, as he says, transfer their strengths into the new single water regulator. I agree with him also that we will and we are working in partnership with farmers to make sure we get this right. We are looking at what we can do with the ELM schemes to ensure that we give them the support they need to tackle pollution of our waterways from agriculture. He talks about culture. I think that he does have a point, but what I would say is I do think that the leadership of some of these companies is very varied. We do see good leadership in some of the companies. For example, Severn Trent that I visited, and they've got a terrific apprenticeship programme. So we need to ensure that we see better performance in the water industry across the board, sharing that best practice from some of those companies who are actually doing the right thing.
Thank you very much. Last night, a 30-inch water main burst at Holland Park roundabout on the boundary of my and my honourable friend for Kensington and Bayswater's constituencies. Homes and cars were flooded to a depth of 3 feet, and since the water was diverted away from the burst, thousands of residents across West London have had little or no fresh water. Schools are closed and traffic is in chaos. This and hundreds of smaller bursts in the recent cold weather are the legacy of Thames Water's failure over not years but decades. Can I thank the Minister for her statement and say that for my constituents, effective inspection and regulation cannot come soon enough?
I thank my honourable friend and thank him for raising this issue. I am being kept regularly updated on the issue that he talked about in Holland Park. I understand that there are 2,000 households off supply. This is unacceptable, and I know that both the regulator but also myself and DEFRA are working closely with the water company to make sure that we get on top of this issue.
Josh Babarinde.
Speaker, not only is it the likes of South East Water and Southern Water that are failing Eastbourne with yet another outage last week, but it is also shipping companies that are damaging our water quality. In Eastbourne, we have seen thousands of bags of oven chips wash up on Eastbourne Beach. But the serious issue is that their decomposition will, in the shore, have experienced a similar thing, whether it's with onions, with bananas, with body lotion from the White Company, and more. So the shipping companies are not mentioned at all in this White Paper. Will the Minister meet with me and with Sussex MPs on the coastline to address this issue and ensure that they pay their fair share towards cleaning up our sea?
Much shorter questions, please.
I thank him for that question. Myself or the Water Minister would be very happy to meet him. I had heard about the incident about the chips on the beach. We are looking in the White Paper more broadly at other sources of pollution, including those from transport and agriculture, but we'd be very happy to have a meeting with him to discuss the issue.
Clive Lewis.
After 18 months, an independent inquiry, and the government's answer is more regulation. Not enforcing the law as it is. Not one water company has lost its licence after what it's done. And yet we think that more bureaucracy, more regulation will make a difference. More bureaucracy will not fix our water. I'm afraid the Secretary of State needs to know the problem is ownership. Private monopolies with guaranteed incomes have asset-stripped, polluted rivers and paid themselves billions. And until that changes, nothing will change. So will the Secretary of State meet with me and other water campaigners to discuss this document, because we can't see any public consultation in the White Paper? Will she at least commit to that, please?
Secretary of State.
I'm always happy to meet with honourable friends, as he well knows. But what I would say to him is that Sir John met with many different stakeholders and members of the public, and we had 50,000 responses to the Independent Water Commission. It is right now that the government gets on with it, sets the direction, lays the foundations for the Water White Paper. I disagree with him on what he says about introducing more regulation. We need a regulator with more teeth, with more powers to enforce the law as it stands, and that's what we're getting on with.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. Look, I welcome many of the measures in this white paper. More regulation will help. But let's be honest, it doesn't get to the heart of the problem, and that is the failure of the privatisation of the water industry. We need to be talking about ownership. That's absent from this paper. And I've heard the conversations in this chamber already today about nationalisation. I agree with the Minister. There will be some drawbacks to a model of nationalisation. It will put substantial liabilities on the book, and it will put sewage infrastructure investment up against investment in schools and hospitals in every budget. But there is another model that the Liberal Democrats are putting forward of cooperative or mutualisation models. Will the Minister take that model into serious consideration?
This is a government that cares deeply about mutuals, and we have pledged overall to double the number of mutuals. I don't have a problem with mutual ownership. The problem I have is the Liberal Democrats have no plan to get there.
James Asser.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. My constituents are not receiving the service they deserve, many of them facing real issues over water pressure, which is intermediate, unreliable and some days non-existent. It's even being raised with me by primary school children when I'm on school visits. Can the Secretary of State reassure my constituents that the White Paper will begin to force the water companies to take action on these day-to-day issues that really affect people's lives? And if they don't, that the regulator will give weight to those complaints and have the kind of teeth that forces them to act so my constituents get the service they deserve and, frankly, are already paying for.
Secretary of State.
Yes, indeed. And the new water regulator, when we're able to legislate for that and set it up, will indeed look at issues that put consumers at the heart of what they're doing.
Cameron Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I was supposed to meet with Severn Trent at a local treatment works in my constituency in December. It was cancelled at short notice after heavy rainfall. They said they didn't want me to get my feet wet. I smell a cover-up. The government's well-intentioned white paper is doomed to fail, though, if they don't mandate water companies to measure their sewage outflows by volume. Is the government going to do that or not?
Well, I thank him for his question. We are absolutely determined to ensure that we bear down on pollution, but we are looking more at the number of incidents and ensuring that we have a better picture of the coverage of storm overflow. So we've got 100% coverage from January last year. We're looking to increase the amounts of coverage for emergency overflows. And the white paper as a whole will ensure that the new, more powerful regulator has the teeth and the powers to crack down on pollution and shine a light on the pollution incidents so that there is nowhere to hide for the illegal use of some of these overflows that we've seen in the past.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I thank the Secretary of State for this white paper, and I concur with some of the comments from many colleagues. I attended a community meeting last week on Kennington Park Estate in my constituency, hearing from residents from Blythe, Alveston and Lockwood House. Many of them hadn't had water since Christmas. We have a situation where it fell on a housing association, and I do want to pay credit to Hyde Housing for responding and providing water to many residents, many of them with children, many elderly, many residents with mobility issues. We have a situation where Thames Water think it is not their job to inform councils and housing associations when they are going to lower the pressure on their estates when they're doing works. Can we please ensure that this new regulator will actually have the right teeth to go after these regulators, because all fines, all warnings, they ignore everything. This regulator needs to have teeth. If not, it's going to be a slap in the face to all our hard-working constituents.
I can promise her that that's exactly what we're going to deliver, a new, more powerful